Hello and welcome to another Harry, your home for amazing stories. Today's story is What If Harry Was Secretly an Addams and Gomez-Morticia Adopted Him Before Hogwarts. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoy it, and subscribe if you haven't already. We post new stories regularly. Let's get started. Chapter 1, The Addams who lived. The mansion on Cemetery Ridge loomed against the perpetual storm clouds, its Gothic spires piercing the night sky like accusatory fingers. Lightning struck the lightning rod atop the highest tower with practiced precision, sending electricity surging through the Addams family home. In the East Wing nursery, 7-year-old Harrison Addams grinned as the lights flickered. His green eyes, unnaturally bright against his pale skin, widened with delight. Again, he shouted, clapping his small hands together. Beside him, his younger sister Wednesday watched impassively, her braided black hair perfectly still despite the rumbling thunder. "Mother said we're not supposed to control the weather until we're 10, she reminded him, though without any real conviction. Harrison's wild black hair seemed to crackle with its own electricity. "I'm not controlling it. I'm appreciating it." He pressed his face against the window glass. "Besides, Uncle Fester said my magic works differently." From somewhere deeper in the house, an explosion rattled the windows, followed by maniacal laughter. "Pugsley's experimenting again," Wednesday noted. Harrison nodded sagely. "Dynamite in the toilet. Father showed him yesterday." The nursery door creaked open dramatically, and Morticia Addams glided into the room, her floor-length black dress trailing behind her like living shadows. Despite having 3 children, she remained impossibly elegant, her waist cinched to painful proportions, her skin luminously pale. "Children," she purred, "it's time for your fencing lesson." Harrison jumped up, already reaching for the rapier mounted on his wall. "Real blades today, Mother." Morticia's blood-red lips curved into an indulgent smile. "Of course, darling. You're almost 8 now. But remember, aim for the heart, not the face," Harrison and Wednesday recited in unison. "Precisely." Morticia caressed a thorn on the black rose she carried. "Family tradition." As they followed their mother down the grand staircase, Harrison paused to stroke the stuffed bear head mounted on the wall. The bear growled appreciatively. In the main hall, Gomez Addams was balancing upside down on his head, smoking a cigar with his toes. "Ah! Los Niños," he exclaimed, somehow flipping to his feet without using his hands. His pinstriped suit remained immaculate, his slick back hair unmoved. "Ready for combat?" "Father," Harrison asked, testing his rapier's balance, "will you tell us again how you found me?" Gomez's eyes lit up with passionate fire. "The greatest day. Besides meeting your mother, of course, and our wedding, and the births of Wednesday and Pugsley, and that time I was executed in Madrid." "Husband," Morticia murmured. "Apologies, cara mia." "The story." Gomez dramatically sheathed his own rapier and gathered the children close. "It was a stormy Halloween night, much like this evening but with more ghouls. There was a magical disturbance," Morticia continued, her voice a velvet caress. "Our family grimoire began to glow. A distant bloodline was in peril." Harrison nodded eagerly. He'd heard this story countless times but never tired of it. "We followed the ancient magic," Gomez continued, mustache twitching with excitement. "Through graveyards and cursed forests. Past ministry barricades and magical wards. And there you were," Morticia said, touching Harrison's wild hair. "A baby with a lightning scar, surrounded by the residue of powerful dark magic. The family blood recognized its own," Gomez declared, puffing his chest. "A distant relation through the black family line, no doubt. We brought you home immediately. Before those ministry fools could find you," Morticia added. "They would never understand our ways." Harrison beamed. The story always filled him with warmth. While some adopted children might question their place, he had never doubted that he belonged with the Addams family. His natural affinity for the unusual, the dark, the macabre, it was clearly inherited, blood calling to blood. Enough reminiscing. Gomez suddenly shouted. En garde. The fencing lesson commenced with gleeful abandon, rapiers flashing in the dim light of the hall. Harrison parried his father's theatrical attacks while Wednesday methodically attempted to corner Pugsley, who had joined them covered in soot from his experiments. Harrison's movements were unnaturally quick, almost as if he could sense the blade before it struck. This had always been the case, his reflexes and intuition bordered on the supernatural, even by Addams' standards. Excellent form. Gomez cheered as Harrison narrowly avoided being skewered. You'd make any ancestor proud. Later, sprawled in the family library while Wednesday practiced her crossbow aim on a stuffed dummy, Harrison pored over one of the ancient Addams grimoires. The leather-bound book, made from what was definitely not cowhide, seemed to respond to his touch, pages turning to reveal secrets the book normally kept hidden. You have a visitor, Master Harrison, intoned Lurch from the doorway, his cavernous voice echoing through the library. Looking up, Harrison spotted a snowy white owl perched on Lurch's massive shoulder. She arrived at the gatehouse, the butler explained. Carrying this. With exquisite slowness, Lurch extended a yellowed envelope sealed with wax. Harrison took it, immediately noting the unusual weight and texture of the parchment. The address was written in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, also known as Harrison Addams, the East Wing Nursery, the Addams Mansion, Cemetery Ridge, Potter. Harrison murmured, turning the envelope over to examine the seal, a coat of arms with 4 animals surrounding the letter H. Mother. Father, he called out. Something strange has arrived. Within moments, the entire family had assembled. Thing, the disembodied hand, scuttled across the table to tap curiously at the envelope. Fascinating, Morticia said, examining the seal. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Gomez twirled his mustache thoughtfully. The British Magical School. I was expelled from their sister institution, Beauxbatons. Something about releasing manticores during finals week. You knew about this? Harrison asked, carefully breaking the seal. We suspected, Morticia admitted. Your particular magic has always been, structured differently from ours. And there was the matter of your birth parents. Harrison paused in unfolding the letter. You know who they were? Morticia and Gomez exchanged glances. We have theories, Gomez said, uncharacteristically serious. The name Potter appears in some old family records. Distant cousins who broke away from the family's more traditional practices. And now they call you Harry Potter, Morticia mused. Curious. Harrison unfolded the letter and read aloud, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source, CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confeed, of Wizards, Dear Mr. Potter/Addams, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl no later than July 31st. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress, Well. Gomez clapped his hands together. This calls for a celebration. Lurch, the special occasion explosives. Wait, Harrison said. What does this mean? About who I was before. Morticia knelt beside him, taking his hands in her cold ones. Harrison, darling, you have always been an Addams. But it seems you also have another legacy to explore. A legacy of wand-waving and incantations. Gomez declared. Less elegant than our blood magic, but respectable in its way. There have been whispers, Morticia continued, of a dark lord who was vanquished many years ago. The same night we found you. You think I'm connected to that? Harrison asked. Your scar, Morticia touched his forehead where the lightning bolt mark had always been. It pulses with old, dark magic. Very impressive for an infant. Harrison considered this. The possibility of another identity, another history, should perhaps have been unsettling. But he was an Addams, the unusual, the macabre, the mysterious, these were all things to be embraced. I want to go, he decided. I want to learn about this other magic. And about the Potters. Splendid! Gomez cried. We shall journey to London immediately. I believe I'm still wanted there for that incident with the Tower Ravens, but it's likely been forgotten by now. And I shall help you pack, dear, Grandmama cackled, shuffling forward. You'll need my special potions kit. Those school recipes are always so bland. As the family dispersed to prepare for the unexpected journey, Harrison remained in the library, examining the letter. The owl watched him with intelligent amber eyes. I suppose you're waiting for a reply, he asked. The owl bobbed its head. Harrison found parchment and a quill, real raven feather, of course, and penned his acceptance, signing it with a flourish, Harrison Addams, formerly Harry Potter. As the owl took flight with his response, Harrison felt a tingle in his scar. Something was beginning. Something that had perhaps been waiting for him all along. Diagon Alley bustled with last-minute school shoppers, a riot of color and noise that contrasted sharply with the Addams family's dignified procession through its center. Morticia glided along the cobblestones, her parasol blocking the offensive sunlight, while Gomez strutted beside her, occasionally flipping gold galleons to startled street vendors. Harrison walked between them, taking in the sights with fascinated eyes. Wednesday and Pugsley flanked him, Wednesday glaring at anyone who stared too long, Pugsley eyeing the apothecary with destructive intent. So many live specimens, Morticia observed as they passed the magical menagerie. How refreshing. People stopped to stare at the procession. Partly because the Addams family's fashion sense, Victorian Gothic with occasional Spanish influences, stood out even among wizarding robes. But mostly because whispers were following them, is that Harry Potter? The boy who lived with that family? Harrison caught the whispers but paid them little mind. He was used to stares. The Addams family attracted them everywhere they went. Ah! Ollivanders. Gomez pointed with his sword cane. The wand shop. Essential equipment for the modern wizard. Inside the dusty shop, the wand maker appeared silently from between the shelves, his silver eyes widening at the sight of the family. I've been expecting you, Mr. Potter, he said softly. Though I confess, not with such distinctive companions. Addams, Harrison corrected politely. Harrison Addams. Of course, Ollivander murmured, though his eyes flickered to Harrison's hidden scar. Well, let's find you a wand, shall we? What followed was a peculiar process of trial and error. Wand after wand was placed in Harrison's hand, only to be snatched away as they variously set fire to nearby objects, shattered windows, or in one memorable instance, caused all the wands on a nearby shelf to animate and perform a macabre dance. Tricky customer, Ollivander muttered. Very tricky. Perhaps, Morticia suggested, something with an affinity for darker magics. Ollivander hesitated. I don't typically, that is to say, for a first-year student. Nonsense. Gomez boomed. The boy was summoning spirits before he could walk. Show him your best. With evident reluctance, Ollivander disappeared into the back of his shop. When he returned, he carried a single box, dust-covered and sealed with wax. Holly and phoenix feather, 11 inches, he said quietly. A powerful combination. The phoenix who gave this feather gave only one other. As Harrison reached for it, the wand seemed to vibrate. When his fingers closed around the handle, a stream of black and silver sparks erupted from the tip, swirling around him before forming the distinct shape of a skeletal hand giving a thumbs up. Curious, Ollivander whispered. Very curious. What's curious? Harrison asked, admiring how right the wand felt in his hand. The phoenix who gave that feather gave only one other, Ollivander repeated. The wand that gave you that scar. A pregnant silence filled the shop, broken only by Pugsley's excited whisper to Wednesday, cool. You mean, Harrison said slowly, the Dark Lord who was vanquished. The one who killed the Potters. Ollivander nodded gravely. How fascinating. Morticia exclaimed, clapping her hands together delicately. A connection to your past through implements of destruction. How poetic. Indeed, Gomez agreed. Like my great-uncle Bloodthirst's cursed dueling pistols. Never could hit anything but family members. Ollivander seemed taken aback by their reaction but said nothing more as Gomez paid for the wand with a flourish. Back on the street, Harrison examined his new wand with pride. It feels alive, he told his parents. Like Cleopatra. Cleopatra was his pet two-headed snake, currently wrapped around Wednesday's arm. Magic responds to your essence, my dear, Morticia explained. And yours has always been, special. Their next stop was Flourish and Blots for Schoolbooks, where Morticia immediately drifted toward the restricted section, somehow bypassing its wards without effort. Gomez entertained himself by challenging a life-sized cardboard cutout of Gilderoy Lockhart to a duel, while Pugsley discovered the explosive potential of combining certain magical texts. Harrison was examining A Beginner's Guide to Transfiguration when he heard a girl's voice, "You're holding that upside down, you know." He looked up to see a bushy-haired girl with large front teeth watching him critically. "I'm reading the hidden message," Harrison explained. Books often reveal more when viewed from different angles. The girl blinked. "That's, actually rather clever. I'm Hermione Granger." She thrust out her hand. Harrison shook it, noting with approval that her grip was firm. "Harrison Addams." Her eyes widened. "Are you really? I've read about you in Modern Magical History and The Rise and Fall of the Dark Arts, only they called you Harry Potter." A previous name, Harrison said with a shrug. "I prefer Harrison now." "Well, it's extraordinary to meet you," Hermione continued. "I'm Muggle-born, so this is all new to me, but I've been practicing spells already and," she broke off as Wednesday appeared silently beside Harrison, staring at Hermione with her usual expressionless intensity. "My sister, Wednesday," Harrison introduced. "She's not old enough for Hogwarts yet. Would you like to see my garrote?" Wednesday asked Hermione flatly. Hermione hesitated. "Perhaps another time." Before the conversation could continue, a commotion broke out near the front of the store. A tall, blond man with a pointed face was arguing loudly with a red-haired man whose robes had seen better days. "Weasley," the blond man was saying, "I'm surprised you can show your face in public after that raid. I heard your department didn't even find anything worthwhile." Now, Lucius," the redhead replied, his face flushing. "Some of us work for more than personal gain." Gomez, never one to miss potential drama, sauntered over. "A duel brewing? Marvelous. I'll be your second, sir." He clapped the red-headed man on the shoulder. Both wizards turned to stare at Gomez in his pinstriped suit, sword cane at the ready, mustache twitching with anticipation. What?" the redhead stammered. "Pistols at dawn. Swords at midnight. Your choice, of course. The challenged party selects the weapons, as is proper." Gomez was practically bouncing with excitement. The blond man, Lucius, sneered. "And who might you be?" "Gomez Addams, at your service." Gomez executed a flamboyant bow. "Explorer, adventurer, tax evader, and most importantly," he straightened with pride, "father of Harrison Addams, formerly known as Potter. Perhaps you've heard of him?" A hush fell over the bookshop. All eyes turned to Harrison, who stood calmly beside Hermione and Wednesday. Lucius Malfoy's pale eyes widened fractionally. "Potter," he said softly. "With you." For nearly a decade now, Morticia glided forward. A fortuitous adoption. The family grimoire recognized his blood. A boy around Harrison's age stepped out from behind Lucius, his features a younger echo of the man's. "Father, is that him? Harry Potter?" Harrison Addams, Harrison corrected, approaching the group. And you are? Malfoy. Draco Malfoy. The boy offered his hand with evident curiosity. Harrison shook it firmly, noting the calculating look in Draco's eyes. My son will be starting Hogwarts this year as well, Lucia said, studying Harrison with undisguised interest. How? Unexpected to find the boy who lived raised by unconventional wizards. We prefer eccentric, Gomez declared cheerfully. Or deranged, depending on the moon phase. I was under the impression, Lucius continued carefully, that you had been placed with Muggle relatives. A common misconception, Morticia replied smoothly. One we've never bothered to correct. Privacy is so important for proper child rearing. The red-headed man had been watching the exchange with growing confusion. Arthur Weasley, he finally introduced himself to Harrison. Ministry of Magic, Misuse of Muggle Artifacts Office. And these are some of my children. He gestured to a collection of redheads browsing nearby. A pair of identical twins waved enthusiastically, while a younger boy about Harrison's age approached cautiously. Ron, the boy said, extending a hand to Harrison. Ron Weasley. Pleasure to meet you, Harrison replied. As they shook hands, he felt a genuine connection with the freckled boy, despite Ron's obvious nervousness. Lucius Malfoy made a dismissive noise. Associating with Weasleys already, Potter. You'll find that some wizarding families are better than others. I'm sure my son would be happy to guide you. I find value in diverse perspectives, Harrison replied evenly. And the name is Addams. Draco looked torn between his father's obvious disdain and his own curiosity about this unusual version of the famous Harry Potter. Perhaps we'll see you on the train, Draco finally said. Perhaps, Harrison agreed. I'll be the one with the severed hand. Ron's eyes widened in alarm, while Draco looked unsure whether to be impressed or horrified. He means Thing, Wednesday explained flatly. Our pet hand. He goes everywhere with us. As if on cue, Thing scuttled out of Gomez's breast pocket and waved to the gathered crowd. Several people gasped. Arthur Weasley looked fascinated. Good heavens. Is that a permanently transfigured, family mystery? Gomez interrupted proudly. Been with us for generations. Lucius Malfoy's lip curled. Come, Draco. We have more refined establishments to visit. With a swirl of his black cloak, he exited the shop, Draco following after a last curious glance at Harrison. The remainder of the Addams family's shopping expedition was less eventful, though they did cause a minor panic in the magical menagerie when Morticia inquired about breeding programs for more venomous species. By late afternoon, they had acquired everything on Harrison's school list, plus several additions Grandmama had insisted upon via Flocall, including 3 varieties of poisonous fungi and a ceremonial dagger, for potions class. As they made their way back toward the leaky cauldron, Harrison spotted Ron Weasley and his family again, the younger members enjoying ice cream outside Florian Fortescue's shop. You should join them, dear, Morticia suggested, noting his interest. Make connections. Alliances are important at school. We'll secure our lodgings for the night, Gomez added. The leaky cauldron claims to have a haunted suite. With his parents' blessing, Harrison approached the Weasley clan, Thing riding on his shoulder. Hi, he said simply. Ron nearly dropped his ice cream. Oh. Hi, Harrison. The twins immediately made room for him at their table. Sit down, Addams, one of them insisted. I'm Fred, said the other. This is George. Ignore everything he says. I'm Fred, the first twin countered. He's lying. I can tell you apart, Harrison informed them calmly. Your auras have different death signatures. Both twins stared at him for a moment before breaking into identical grins. Wicked, they said in unison. Ron seemed simultaneously fascinated and terrified. So, is that really a living hand? He asked, pointing at Thing. Thing gave a jaunty wave, then did a handstand on the table. "Thing's been in the family for generations," Harrison explained, repeating his father's line. "He's very useful. Excellent at chess." "Brilliant," Ron said, his fear giving way to genuine interest. "I love chess." "Me too," Harrison smiled. "My Uncle Fester carved me a set from graveyard marble. The pieces actually bleed when captured." Ron swallowed hard but gamely continued. "Maybe we could play sometime. On the train, maybe?" "I'd like that," Harrison said, and meant it. As the conversation flowed more naturally, Harrison found himself enjoying the Weasleys' company. The twins' mischievous nature reminded him pleasantly of Pugsley's experimental approach to explosives, while Ron's straightforward manner was refreshing. "So were you raised by wizards, then?" Ron asked eventually. "Only everyone thought you were with Muggles all this time. My family practices different magic than what's taught at Hogwarts," Harrison explained carefully. "Ancient arts, passed down through bloodlines." "Blood magic?" Hermione Granger had appeared beside their table, clutching a towering pile of books. "That's supposed to be incredibly powerful but dangerous." "Only if you lack proper instruction," Harrison corrected. "My mother has been teaching me since I was 4. "That's technically not allowed," Hermione pointed out, though she sat down, clearly intrigued rather than disapproving. "Underage wizards, the Ministry has certain blind spots," Harrison shrugged. "Our house exists in one of them." The conversation shifted to Hogwarts houses, with Ron insisting that Gryffindor was the only worthwhile option. "My whole family's been in Gryffindor," he explained proudly. "House of the Brave." "I've been reading about the houses," Hermione said. "Gryffindor sounds best, but Ravenclaw wouldn't be bad either." "What about you, Harrison?" Ron asked. "Any idea which you'll be in?" Harrison considered the question. "I'm not sure Hogwarts has a house for people like me." "Slytherin might," Fred, or was it George, suggested. "They're all about darkness and ambition." "That Malfoy kid's bound to be Slytherin," the other twin added. "His whole family was." "I don't fear darkness," Harrison said simply. "But I don't serve it either. The Addams family walks its own path." This philosophical statement was met with a moment of silence, broken only when Thing stole a spoonful of Ron's ice cream, causing the boy to jump in surprise. "Your hand has its own personality," he exclaimed. "Of course," Harrison replied, as if this were the most natural thing in the world. "Don't yours?" The resulting laughter broke the last of the tension, and by the time Harrison rejoined his family at the Leaky Cauldron, he felt he had made his first real friends in the wizarding world. Platform 9 3/4 was crowded with students and parents when the Addams family arrived on September 1. Their appearance caused the usual stir, Gomez in his pinstriped suit and spats, Morticia in a floor-length black gown despite the late summer heat, Wednesday and Pugsley looking like miniature undertakers, and Harrison himself, pushing a trunk adorned with silver skull fixtures. "Now remember, darling," Morticia was saying, "write to us every week. Use the special parchment I packed if you need to communicate anything sensitive. And if anyone challenges you to a duel," Gomez added enthusiastically, "aim for the heart. Unless it's a teacher, in which case, aim for non-vital organs. School policies and all that." "I packed some of my special cookies," Pugsley told Harrison, handing him a suspicious-looking paper bag. "The ones with the gunpowder center." "And here's Marie Antoinette," Wednesday said flatly, passing him a small box with air holes. She was getting too big for her terrarium anyway. Harrison peeked inside to see his favorite two-headed viper coiled comfortably among some dark cloth. "Thanks, Wednesday. I'll make sure she gets plenty of exercise. Remember," Morticia instructed, "she prefers her mice pre-strangled but not dead. The fear adds flavor." As Harrison moved to board the train, he spotted Ron Weasley with his family nearby. The red-haired boy waved enthusiastically, though his mother seemed to be eyeing the Addamses with a mixture of curiosity and alarm. You've made a friend, Morticia observed approvingly. How nice. Several, I think, Harrison replied. The Weasleys and a girl named Hermione Granger. Excellent, Gomez declared. Allies are crucial in new territory. Now, about those secret passages I mentioned, the map is hidden in the false bottom of your trunk, beneath the emergency crossbow. With final embraces from his family, Pugsley attempting a headlock, Wednesday giving him a solemn handshake, and his parents hugging him with genuine affection, Harrison boarded the Hogwarts Express. Thing insisted on riding on his shoulder, occasionally waving to startled students as they passed compartments. Harrison found Ron already seated in a compartment near the middle of the train. There you are. Ron said, visibly relieved. I saved you a seat. Thank you, Harrison replied, stowing his trunk with surprising strength for his size. He sat opposite Ron, Thing jumping down to explore the compartment. Is your hand loose again? Ron asked nervously. Thing goes where he pleases, Harrison explained. He'll be back when he gets hungry. Ron looked like he wanted to ask more questions but was interrupted by the compartment door sliding open. Hermione Granger stood there, already changed into her school robes. Hello again, she said briskly. Mind if I join you? Everywhere else is getting full. Please do, Harrison replied before Ron could respond. Hermione sat beside Ron, immediately launching into an explanation of everything she'd read about Hogwarts since their meeting in Diagon Alley. Her enthusiasm was interrupted only when the compartment door opened again to reveal Draco Malfoy, flanked by two larger boys. They're saying Harry Potter is on the train, Draco announced, then spotted Harrison. Ah, there you are. Though you prefer Addams now, don't you? I do, Harrison confirmed calmly. Draco's gaze flicked to Ron and Hermione. You should be more selective about the company you keep, Addams. Some wizarding families are better than others. Harrison tilted his head slightly. By what metric? The question seemed to catch Draco off guard. What? By what metric are some families better? Magical power? Historical significance? Net worth? Murder count? Harrison's tone remained casual, genuinely curious rather than confrontational. Draco blinked, clearly not used to having his statements questioned so directly. Well, purity of blood, obviously. Ah, Harrison nodded. The Addams bloodline includes vampires, ghouls, and at least one Wendigo, so I'm not sure where that places us on your scale. Ron choked back a laugh while Hermione looked horrified. You're joking, Draco said flatly. About the Wendigo? Not at all. Great Aunt Devuria. We don't invite her to family gatherings anymore. Not after the Christmas of '87. The two large boys behind Draco shifted uncomfortably, while Draco himself seemed torn between fascination and disdain. Well, he finally said, my offer stands. If you want to associate with the right sort at Hogwarts, you know where to find me. As he turned to leave, Thing scuttled back into the compartment, having completed his exploration of the train. Seeing the visitors, Thing stopped, then deliberately climbed up Draco's robes before the boy could react. What the? Draco yelped as Thing perched on his shoulder and gave a friendly pat to his cheek. Thing likes you, Harrison observed with mild surprise. He's usually more selective. Draco stood frozen, clearly torn between horror and a reluctance to show fear. Get it off me, he finally managed, his voice higher than normal. Thing, Harrison called. Come back now. We don't climb on people without permission. The disembodied hand gave Draco's hair a quick, affectionate ruffle before leaping back to Harrison's shoulder. Your family is completely mental, Draco declared, but there was a note of something almost like admiration in his voice before he turned and left, his bewildered sidekicks following. Once they were gone, Ron burst into laughter. Did you see his face? Brilliant. Thing has good instincts about people, Harrison said, stroking the hand with one finger. He thinks Draco is redeemable. Redeemable? Hermione questioned. From what? From whatever caused that shadow in his aura, Harrison replied. There's fear there. Old fear. This statement was met with silence, Ron and Hermione exchanging uncertain glances. Before either could respond, however, the compartment door slid open yet again, this time revealing a round-faced boy who looked close to tears. Sorry, he said miserably, but have you seen a toad? I've lost mine. What's his name? Harrison asked, standing. Trevor, the boy replied. Harrison closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them. Third car from the front, under the seat near the window. He's afraid but unharmed. The boy gaped at him. How could you possibly know that? Harrison shrugged. Animals and I understand each other. Would you like me to help you retrieve him? Yes, please, the boy stammered. I'm Neville, by the way. Neville Longbottom. Something flickered in Harrison's memory at the name, but he pushed it aside for now. Harrison Addams. This is Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger. The four students made their way through the train, Harrison leading confidently. Sure enough, they found Trevor exactly where Harrison had predicted, the toad looking rather disgruntled at being discovered. That was amazing, Neville said as Harrison gently handed him the escaped amphibian. Are you some kind of animal expert? Not particularly, Harrison replied. I just listen. Back in their compartment, the four students settled in for the remainder of the journey, sharing sweets from the trolley and stories about their backgrounds. Harrison was deliberately vague about his upbringing, sharing amusing anecdotes about his family without revealing too much about their more unusual practices. As the train pulled into Hogsmeade Station, darkness had fallen. Harrison felt a familiar thrill at the shadows, his natural element. Fur's years. Fur's years over here, called a booming voice as they disembarked. Harrison looked up, at the enormous bearded man holding a lantern. That's Hagrid, Ron whispered. Gamekeeper. Hello. Hagrid's voice faltered as his eyes found Harrison. Blimey, is that, Harry Potter? Harrison Addams, he corrected politely. But yes, I was born Harry Potter. Hagrid's beetle-black eyes widened. Well, I'll be, look how ye've grown. I haven't seen ye since ye were a baby. We all thought, he broke off, suddenly aware of the crowd of curious first-years gathering around them. Right, we'll chat later. Fur's years, follow me. The journey across the lake was peaceful, the black water reminding Harrison pleasantly of the swamp behind the Addams mansion. When Hogwarts Castle came into view, its windows glowing against the night sky, even Harrison was impressed by its Gothic splendor. Mother would love the architecture, he murmured to Thing, who had remained faithfully on his shoulder. After disembarking from the boats, the first years were led up to the castle and into an antechamber where a stern-looking witch in emerald robes awaited them. Welcome to Hogwarts, she said. I am Professor McGonagall. The start-of-term banquet will begin shortly, but before you take your seats, you will be sorted into your houses. As she explained the 4 houses and the point system, Harrison observed her closely. There was power there, carefully controlled. He appreciated that. I shall return when we are ready for you, Professor McGonagall concluded. Please wait quietly. The moment she left, excited whispers broke out among the first years. How do you think they sort us? Hermione was asking anxiously. I've read Hogwarts, a history, but it doesn't specify the exact method. Some kind of test, I think, Ron replied nervously. Fred said it hurts a lot, but I think he was joking. It's a hat, Harrison said absently, his attention caught by the ghost that had just drifted through the wall. An enchanted hat that reads your mind. Both Ron and Hermione turned to stare at him. How do you know that? Hermione demanded. Harrison smiled slightly. The ghosts are talking about it. He nodded toward the silvery figures now floating around the chamber, causing several students to shriek in surprise. You can hear them from here. Ron looked impressed. Death and I are old friends, Harrison replied cryptically. Before anyone could question this statement, Professor McGonagall returned to lead them into the Great Hall. Harrison walked calmly among his anxious peers, thing now hidden in his pocket to avoid immediate detection by the staff. The Great Hall was magnificent, its enchanted ceiling showing a clear, starry night. Thousands of candles floated in midair, illuminating 4 long tables where the rest of the students sat. At the front of the hall, the teachers watched from a 5th table. Professor McGonagall placed a 4-legged stool before the first years, and atop it, she set a patched, frayed, and extremely dirty wizard's hat. For a moment, there was silence, then the hat twitched and a rip near the brim opened like a mouth. The hat began to sing a song about the 4 houses, their founders, and its own role in sorting students. Harrison listened with interest, noting the distinct personalities attributed to each house. When the hat finished, Professor McGonagall stepped forward with a long roll of parchment. "When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted," she announced. Abbott, Hannah. Harrison watched as, one by one, his fellow first-years were sorted. Hermione went to Gryffindor after nearly a minute under the hat, as did Neville. Draco Malfoy was immediately placed in Slytherin, to no one's surprise. Finally, McGonagall called, "Potter, Harry." Whispers erupted throughout the hall. "Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter?" Harrison stepped forward calmly. "I go by Harrison Addams now," he informed McGonagall politely. The professor's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Very well. Addams, Harrison." As Harrison sat on the stool, the hat was placed on his head, falling down over his eyes. Immediately, he heard a small voice in his ear. Well, what have we here? Oh my, how fascinating. Born a Potter but raised an Addams. I haven't sorted an Addams in over a century. Your family usually attends Durmstrang or receives private tutoring. I'm aware, Harrison thought back. But I'm also Harry Potter, apparently. Indeed you are, the hat chuckled. And what a complex mind you have. Courage, oh yes, in abundance. Intelligence too, though of a rather unconventional sort. Loyalty to those you consider family, and ambition, certainly. But where to put you? Harrison waited patiently as the hat deliberated. You don't care, do you? The hat finally said. How refreshing. Most students have strong preferences. I'm curious to see where you think I belong, Harrison replied mentally. My family has always charted its own path. Yes, I see that, the hat mused. Well then, given everything I see in your mind, your upbringing, your natural talents, and the destiny that awaits you, better be Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the entire hall. The Gryffindor table erupted in cheers, the Weasley twins chanting, "We got Potter. We got Potter." As Harrison removed the hat, he thought he heard it whisper, "Good luck, young Addams. You'll need it." Harrison made his way to the Gryffindor table, where he was greeted enthusiastically. Ron joined him shortly afterward, looking relieved to be placed in the same house. Knew you'd be with us. Ron said happily. Though I half expected you in Slytherin, with all that talk of blood and darkness. The hat considered it, Harrison admitted. But apparently I'm more lion than serpent at heart. From the high table, Harrison noticed several teachers watching him with interest. A hook-nosed man with greasy black hair was particularly intense in his scrutiny, while the turbaned professor beside him seemed oddly nervous, avoiding direct eye contact. As the feast appeared on the golden plates before them, Harrison examined the food with curiosity. It was considerably more conventional than what he was used to at home. No roast chimera, no boiled cactus with eyeball garnish, not even grandmama's special fungi casserole. Is something wrong with the food? Hermione asked, noticing his hesitation. Just different from home, Harrison replied, selecting a slice of roast beef. We have more exotic tastes. Like what? Ron asked through a mouthful of potatoes. Last Sunday we had braised griffin with mandrake sauce, Harrison recalled. Wednesday caught it herself. First successful hunt. Ron choked on his food while Hermione looked scandalized. Griffins are protected magical creatures, she gasped. Are they? Harrison seemed genuinely surprised. I'll have to tell Wednesday. She'll be disappointed, though. She was planning to catch a sphinx next summer. As dinner progressed, conversation flowed around Harrison. His housemates were clearly curious about him, but also somewhat wary, his unusual mannerisms and casual references to the macabre creating a natural distance. After dessert, as the feast came to a close, Professor Dumbledore rose to his feet. The elderly wizard, with his long silver beard and half-moon spectacles, had an aura of immense power that even Harrison could respect. Just a few start-of-term announcements, Dumbledore said. First years should note that the forest on the grounds is forbidden to all pupils. A few of our older students would do well to remember that as well. His eyes twinkled in the direction of the Weasley twins. I must also tell you that this year, the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side is out of bounds to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. While most students looked alarmed, Harrison perked up with interest. Did he say death? He whispered to Ron. Yeah, but he's probably just trying to scare us off, Ron replied. Though with Dumbledore, you never know. As the prefects led the first years to Gryffindor Tower, Harrison found himself walking beside Neville, who seemed both exhausted and nervous. Are you really Harry Potter? Neville asked quietly. The boy who survived you know who? Apparently, Harrison replied. Though I didn't know that until recently. I've always been Harrison Addams. My gran told me about that night, Neville continued hesitantly. About what happened to your parents? They were hurt by his followers, just after. Harrison studied Neville with new interest. I'm sorry to hear that. Perhaps we have more in common than I realized. Neville gave him a weak smile, and Harrison felt an unexpected connection with the timid boy. Both orphans of a sort, both marked by the same dark period in wizarding history. Gryffindor Tower was accessed through a portrait of a fat lady in a pink dress, who demanded a password, Caput Draconis, before swinging aside to reveal a cozy common room filled with squashy armchairs and a crackling fire. Boys' dormitory is upstairs to the left, the prefect, Percy Weasley, informed them. You'll find your belongings have already been brought up. In the first-year dormitory, Harrison discovered his trunk placed beside a four-poster bed hung with deep red curtains. As his roommates, Ron, Neville, Seamus Finnegan, and Dean Thomas, began changing into pajamas and chattering about the feast, Harrison carefully opened the box Wednesday had given him. Marie Antoinette, his two-headed snake, slithered out onto his bed, both heads tasting the air with forked tongues. Is that a snake? Seamus exclaimed, jumping back. Two snakes, technically, Harrison corrected, letting the reptile coil around his wrist. Marie and Antoinette share a body. You can't have a snake in the dormitory. Dean protested. It's not on the approved pets list. She's not a pet, Harrison explained patiently. She's family. Ron, who had initially backed away, approached cautiously. Do they, bite? Only on command, Harrison assured him. Or if they feel I'm threatened. That's not reassuring. Neville squeaked from behind his bed curtains. Harrison sighed. He'd anticipated some resistance to his more unconventional habits. I promise Marie Antoinette won't hurt any of you unless you try to harm me in my sleep. Would you prefer I keep her in a terrarium? There was a collective nod from his roommates. Very well. Harrison retrieved a small glass container from his trunk, which magically expanded into a suitable habitat as he set it on his bedside table. But she gets free time every evening. With Marie Antoinette settled in her new home, Harrison changed into his pajamas, black silk with a subtle pattern of silver skulls, and climbed into bed. Thing emerged from his pocket and scuttled onto the bedpost, where it assumed a watchful position. "Good night, Thing," Harrison said, drawing the curtains around his bed. "Good night, everyone." There was a mumbled chorus of "good nights" in return, though Harrison could hear his roommates whispering about him as they settled down. Lying in the unfamiliar bed, Harrison reflected on the day. He had been sorted into Gryffindor, made potential friends, and begun to uncover the mystery of his birth identity. Beyond the dormitory window, the forbidden forest beckoned darkly, promising adventures his family would approve of. Harrison smiled into the darkness. Hogwarts was going to be interesting. The first week of classes was a whirlwind of new experiences. Harrison quickly discovered that his unconventional upbringing had prepared him well for some aspects of magical education but left significant gaps in others. In Charms class with tiny Professor Flitwick, Harrison demonstrated a natural affinity for wand work. When practicing the levitation charm, his feather not only rose but executed a perfect spiral pattern before settling gently back on his desk. "Excellent control, Mr. Addams," squeaked Professor Flitwick. 5 points to Gryffindor. Transfiguration proved more challenging. While Harrison understood the theory perfectly, his attempts to transform a match into a needle resulted in something that resembled a tiny silver bone. "An interesting variation, Mr. Addams," Professor McGonagall observed with a raised eyebrow. "Though not quite what was assigned." "Apologies, Professor," Harrison replied. "At home, we focus more on transformations with practical applications. Grandmother's specialty is transfiguring household items into implements of torture." McGonagall's lips thinned to a nearly invisible line. "Perhaps we could discuss your prior magical education after class." Herbology was a pleasant surprise. Harrison's extensive knowledge of poisonous and carnivorous plants impressed Professor Sprout, though she was somewhat alarmed by his suggestion to breed the venomous tentacula with Devil's Snare to create a more efficient strangulation system. Defense against the dark arts was disappointing. Professor Quirrell, with his pronounced stutter and nervous demeanor, seemed afraid of his own subject matter. More curiously, Harrison noticed that his scar tended to prickle uncomfortably whenever Quirrell turned his back. But it was potions that proved most intriguing. The class was held in the dungeons, a setting that instantly made Harrison feel at home. The chill, the dampness, the faint smell of mold, it reminded him pleasantly of the Addams family crypt. Professor Snape began the class with roll call, pausing when he reached Harrison's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly. "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." "Harrison Addams, sir," Harrison corrected politely. "Though I was born Harry Potter, yes." Snape's black eyes bored into him. "How interesting that you've abandoned your family name." "Not abandoned, Professor," Harrison replied calmly. "Expanded. The Addams family took me in when I was orphaned. They are my family now, by blood and by choice." Something flickered in Snape's expression, surprise, perhaps, or confusion. It was quickly replaced by his usual cold demeanor. "Well, Mr. Addams," Snape continued, "let's see if fame translates to talent. What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Beside Harrison, Hermione's hand shot into the air. He considered the question. "The draught of living death, sir," he answered. "Though my grandmother adds extract of nightshade to enhance the paralytic effects. Makes it harder for the victim to scream." A stunned silence fell over the classroom. Snape's eyebrows rose marginally. "And where, Mr. Addams, would you look if I asked you to find a bezoar?" "In the stomach of a goat, traditionally," Harrison replied. "Though Uncle Fester once found one in a mountain troll he wrestled. He says it saved his life when Aunt Dementia tried to poison him on their anniversary. Family tradition." By now, the other students were staring at Harrison in horror, while Snape seemed caught between his desire to intimidate the boy and genuine surprise at his answers. "What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" Snape tried again. "They're the same plant, also called aconite," Harrison answered. We grow it in our garden. Wednesday uses it for her dart practice. Snape stared at him for a long moment before addressing the class. Well? Why aren't you all copying that down? There was a sudden scramble for quills and parchment. Snape turned back to Harrison. 5 points to Gryffindor for correct answers, Mr. Addams, he said reluctantly. And a point from Gryffindor for unsolicited details about your families, hobbies. The rest of the potions lesson proceeded with Snape prowling the dungeon, criticizing almost everyone except Malfoy, whom he seemed to favor, and Harrison, whom he seemed unsure how to approach. When Neville managed to melt his cauldron, creating a toxic mess, Harrison calmly helped contain the spillage using techniques clearly learned from handling dangerous substances at home. Thank you, Neville whispered as they cleaned up. How did you know what to do? Accidents happen all the time in our family laboratory, Harrison explained. Usually with more explosive results. By Friday morning, Harrison had established a reputation as both the famous Harry Potter and the decidedly unusual Harrison Addams. Students tended to stare and whisper when he passed, though whether this was due to his celebrity status or the fact that Thing occasionally waved at them from his shoulder was unclear. At breakfast, the mail arrived with the usual flurry of owls. To Harrison's delight, his family's raven, Nevermore, swooped down with a black ribbon package. Is that a raven? Hermione asked, eyeing the glossy black bird as it helped itself to Harrison's bacon. Family messenger, Harrison confirmed, untying the package. Owls are fine, but ravens have a better sense of drama. The package contained several items, a letter from his parents, a small box of Grandmama's special cookies, which emitted a faint purple smoke when opened, a crude drawing from Pugsley of what appeared to be Harrison being eaten by a giant squid, and a perfectly preserved bat wing from Wednesday with a note reading simply, "For luck." Harrison smiled as he read his parents' letter. Dearest Harrison, we hope your first week at Wizard School has been appropriately dreadful. The house feels so mundanely peaceful without your particular brand of chaos. Wednesday has taken to setting your room on fire nightly in your honor. Uncle Fester attempted to contact you through the family seance circle, but apparently the wards around your school interfered. He merely succeeded in summoning Great Aunt Lavinia, who was quite put out at being disturbed during her eternal rest. Regarding your questions about the Potter family, Gomez has been researching our genealogical records and found some intriguing connections. It seems the Potter line did indeed intersect with the Addams family several generations back, through a squib branch of the Black family. Blood will tell. We've enclosed some essentials from home to make your dormitory more comfortable. The miniature Iron Maiden for Thing is in the hidden compartment. Do let us know if you require anything else, poisons, curses, or legal advice. Cousin ITT knows several excellent magical lawyers should the need arise. With deepest affection, Morticia and Gomez P.S. Your father says to remind you about the secret passages. Adventure, my boy. Adventure. Are your parents always so? Hermione searched for a diplomatic word, having read the letter over Harrison's shoulder. Supportive? Harrison suggested. I was going to say, intense, Hermione admitted. They're exactly what parents should be, Harrison replied with genuine warmth. Accepting, encouraging, and only occasionally homicidal. Ron, who had been examining Grandmama's cookies with suspicion, asked, "What's in these, exactly?" "They're moving." "Best not to ask," Harrison advised. "But they're quite effective if you need to stay awake for 3 days straight." After breakfast, the Gryffindors headed to their first flying lesson, which they would be sharing with the Slytherins. Harrison had mixed feelings about flying on broomsticks. The Addams family preferred more dramatic modes of transportation, Cousin Vlad's bat form, Great-Uncle Fiendish's enchanted hearse, or in Grandmama's case, a mortar and pestle large enough to ride in. On the training grounds, Madame Hooch instructed them to stand by a broomstick and command it to rise with the word "up." Harrison's broom leapt into his hand immediately, one of the few that did. Across from him, Draco Malfoy achieved the same result, giving Harrison a small nod of acknowledgement. "Now, when I blow my whistle, kick off from the ground," hard, Madam Hooch instructed. Keep your broom steady, rise a few feet, then come straight back down by leaning forward slightly. Before she could blow her whistle, however, Neville's broom suddenly lurched upward. The nervous boy, already jumpy, clung desperately to the handle as the broomstick rose higher and higher. "Come back, boy!" Madam Hooch shouted, but Neville was clearly not in control. As the class watched in horror, Neville slipped sideways off the broom and plummeted toward the ground. Harrison reacted instinctively, pulling a small black pouch from his robes and flinging its contents upward with a practiced gesture. A cloud of dark powder expanded beneath Neville, forming a strange, shifting cushion that caught him just before he hit the ground. Instead of a bone-breaking impact, Neville bounced gently before settling onto the grass, covered in what looked like soot but smelled faintly of cloves. "What in Merlin's name?" Madam Hooch rushed over, checking Neville for injuries. "Cushioning powder," Harrison explained. "Family recipe for breaking falls during duels." "That was amazing," Ron whispered, staring at the black residue still floating in the air. "Quick thinking, Mr. Addams," Madam Hooch acknowledged, helping Neville to his feet. "Though unauthorized substances are generally not permitted during flying lessons. Would you have preferred I let him break something?" Harrison asked reasonably. Madam Hooch sighed. 5 points to Gryffindor for preventing injury. But please, no more surprises during my class. As she led a shaken but unharmed Neville to the hospital wing for a checkup, she warned the remaining students to keep their feet firmly on the ground until she returned. No sooner had she disappeared than Draco Malfoy spotted something glinting in the grass, Neville's Remembrall, which had fallen from his pocket. "Look what Longbottom dropped," Draco said, scooping it up. "Maybe if he had used this, he'd remember to land on his fat backside." "That's not his backside's fault," Harrison commented. "The broom was clearly affected by a flight jinx. Someone interfered with its enchantments." This observation caused the students to look around suspiciously. Who would jinx Neville's broom? "Give it here, Malfoy," Harrison said calmly, extending his hand for the Remembrall. Draco hesitated, clearly weighing his options. "I think I'll leave it somewhere for Longbottom to find," he finally decided. "How about up a tree?" He mounted his broomstick and took off, demonstrating considerable flying skill as he hovered level with the topmost branches of a nearby oak. Harrison sighed. He'd hoped to avoid showing off too early in the term, but principles were principles. Without hesitation, he mounted his own broom and kicked off from the ground. The sensation was different from what he'd expected. Rather than the wild ride he was accustomed to when Uncle Fester launched him from the family catapult, broom flying felt controlled, precise. The wind rushed past his face as he ascended to Draco's level with surprising ease. "Impressive," Draco acknowledged. "I didn't think you'd actually follow." "I'm full of surprises," Harrison replied. "The Remembrall, please. Catch it if you can." Draco called, throwing the glass ball high into the air before streaking back toward the ground. Harrison tracked the falling Remembrall with practiced ease, then executed a sharp dive. The ground rushed toward him as he accelerated, his hand outstretched. Just when collision seemed inevitable, his fingers closed around the glass sphere, and he pulled up, brushing the grass with his toes before gliding to a gentle stop. The Gryffindors erupted in cheers while the Slytherins looked on with reluctant admiration. Harrison Addams. Professor McGonagall was running toward them, her face a mask of shock and concern. "Never, in all my time at Hogwarts, it was a controlled descent, Professor," Harrison explained calmly. "I calculated the velocity and air resistance before attempting it." "That's not, you could have broken your neck." "Unlikely," Harrison replied. "I've survived worse falls into the family quicksand pit." McGonagall seemed momentarily lost for words. "Follow me," she finally managed. As Harrison followed her back into the castle, he heard Ron defending him to the other students. The redhead's loyalty was becoming a consistent feature, one that Harrison found he appreciated. To his surprise, McGonagall led him not to her office but to a classroom, where she asked another professor to borrow wood. Harrison briefly wondered if this was a Scottish form of punishment involving being struck with lumber, but it turned out that Wood was a burly fifth-year boy. "Potter, Addams, this is Oliver Wood. Wood, I found you a seeker." What followed was a rapid conversation about Quidditch, house teams, and Harrison's natural talent. By the time McGonagall dismissed him to his next class, Harrison had apparently been drafted onto the Gryffindor Quidditch team, the youngest player in a century. "You must be joking," Ron said when Harrison explained what had happened. "First years never make the house teams." "I'm not entirely clear on what Quidditch involves," Harrison admitted as they headed to dinner. "Is it the one with the balls that try to kill you?" "Bludgers," Ron confirmed eagerly. "They're enchanted to knock players off their brooms." "But that's only part of it." As Ron launched into an enthusiastic explanation of Quidditch rules, they entered the Great Hall. Harrison was immediately approached by the Weasley twins. "Well done, Addams," said one of them. "George," Harrison thought, based on his aura. "Wood told us the news." "We're on the team too," Fred added. "Beaters. Our job is to make sure you don't get bloodied up too badly. Though we hear you're pretty good at handling yourself," George continued. "Is it true you used some kind of dark powder to save Neville?" Fred asked, eyes gleaming with interest. "Not dark," Harrison corrected. "Just complex. Family recipe." "You've got to tell us more about these family recipes," George said with undisguised eagerness. "Perhaps a demonstration," Fred began, but was interrupted by a less welcome visitor. "Enjoying your last meal, Addams?" Draco Malfoy had appeared behind them, flanked as usual by his large companions. "Before you're sent back to whatever freak show you call a family?" Harrison turned calmly. "The freak show comment lacks originality, Draco. My cousin ITT has heard better insults from mindless zombies." Draco flushed. "Think you're clever, do you? Think you're special because of who your birth parents were? Or because McGonagall bent the rules to put you on the Quidditch team?" "I think I'm special because I can commune with the spirits of the dead and command venomous creatures," Harrison replied matter-of-factly. "The Quidditch thing is just a bonus." This response clearly threw Draco off his rhythm. "I could take you on any time," he finally said. "Tonight, if you want." "Wizard's duel. Wands only, no contact." "Interesting proposition," Harrison mused. "Though in my family, duels typically involve more lethal implements. Wands seem rather tame." "Scared, Addams?" Draco sneered. "Disappointed," Harrison corrected. "But I accept your terms. Midnight in the trophy room?" "Done," Draco agreed. "Crabbe is my second." "Who's yours?" "Ron will do admirably," Harrison decided, nodding to his friend. "Me?" Ron squeaked, though he quickly composed himself. "Yeah, that's right. I'm his second." After Draco and his cronies departed, Hermione leaned across the table, frowning deeply. "You can't go wandering around the school at night. You'll lose points for Gryffindor if you're caught." "Only if we're caught," Harrison replied. "And Addamses are naturally gifted at moving unseen in darkness." "It's a trap anyway," Hermione insisted. "He's probably planning to tip off Filch and get you in trouble." Harrison considered this a valid strategy. Duplicitous but effective. "We'll need to adapt accordingly." True to Hermione's prediction, as Harrison and Ron prepared to leave Gryffindor Tower that night, she confronted them in the common room, wearing a pink bathrobe and a severe expression. "You're really going through with this?" she demanded. "A matter of honor," Harrison replied, checking that thing was securely in his pocket. "In my family, we never refuse a duel. Don't you care about Gryffindor? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup because you were fool enough to get caught." "We won't be caught," Harrison assured her. "I've mapped 3 alternate routes back to the tower in case of pursuit." As they climbed through the portrait hole, Hermione followed, still protesting. You're being completely irresponsible. Their argument was cut short when they discovered the fat lady had left her portrait, leaving Hermione stranded outside with them. Now what am I supposed to do? She demanded. Come with us, Harrison suggested pragmatically. Safety in numbers. Their group expanded further when they discovered Neville sleeping outside the portrait hole, having forgotten the password. Unable to leave him alone, they reluctantly brought him along to the trophy room. This is ridiculous, Hermione whispered as they crept through the dark corridors. We're going to get expelled before classes even properly begin. Unlikely, Harrison replied. Expulsion would require multiple serious infractions. At worst, we face detention and point loss. The trophy room was empty when they arrived, its silver cups gleaming in the moonlight. Harrison immediately noted that something felt off. He's not coming, he concluded after a moment. Your trap theory was correct, Hermione. As if on cue, they heard a voice from the adjoining room, Filch, speaking to his cat, Mrs. Norris. Sniff around, my sweet. They're hiding somewhere. Without hesitation, Harrison led his companions through the opposite door, gesturing for silence as they crept down a long gallery full of suits of armor. Neville's nerves got the better of him, however, and he suddenly broke into a run, tripping and crashing into a suit of armor with a deafening clatter. Run! Ron shouted, and the four of them sprinted down the corridor. Harrison led them through a tapestry concealing a hidden passageway, emerging near their charms classroom, far from the trophy room. I think we lost him, Ron panted, leaning against the wall. This was exactly what I warned you about. Hermione said, catching her breath. Malfoy tricked you. Yes, we've established that, Harrison acknowledged. A cunning, if predictable, strategy. What do we do now? Neville whimpered, still trembling from their flight. Harrison considered their position. The third floor isn't far from here. We could take the east staircase and, we need to get back to Gryffindor Tower, Hermione interrupted. Or, Harrison suggested, a gleam in his eye, we could investigate what's in that forbidden corridor Dumbledore mentioned. Are you insane? Hermione gasped. The painful death part actually sounded intriguing, Harrison admitted. In my family, that's practically an invitation. Before Hermione could protest further, they heard Filch's shuffling footsteps approaching the charms corridor. This way, Harrison whispered, leading them toward the forbidden corridor almost by default, as it was the only direction Filch wasn't coming from. They soon found themselves at the end of the corridor, facing a locked door. That's it, Ron moaned. We're done for. Not necessarily, Harrison replied, examining the lock. He reached into his pocket and withdrew Thing, who had been riding along quietly the whole time. Would you mind? Thing gave a small salute, then inserted one finger into the keyhole, manipulating it with expert precision until a click signaled success. What in Merlin's name is that? Hermione hissed, staring at the disembodied hand. Thing, Harrison introduced as they slipped through the door. Family friend. Once inside, they discovered exactly why the corridor was forbidden. They were facing an enormous three-headed dog, filling the entire space between ceiling and floor. 6 mad eyes stared at them, 3 noses twitching in their direction, 3 mouths drooling with anticipation. Magnificent, Harrison breathed, while his companions froze in terror. The dog was standing on a trapdoor, Harrison noticed, suggesting it was guarding something. Before he could investigate further, Ron grabbed his arm and pulled him backwards toward the door. They tumbled back into the corridor, slamming the door shut behind them. Without pausing, they ran all the way back to Gryffindor Tower, where the fat lady had fortunately returned. What do they think they're doing, keeping a thing like that locked up in a school? Ron demanded once they were safely inside the common room. Didn't you see what it was standing on? Hermione asked, still catching her breath. The trapdoor, Harrison confirmed. It's guarding something. Exactly, Hermione said. Now, If you don't mind, I'm going to bed before either of you comes up with another clever idea to get us killed, or worse, expelled." As she stormed off to the girls' dormitory, Ron stared after her. She needs to sort out her priorities. I like her, Harrison decided. She notices details. You're both mental, Ron declared, though with a hint of affection. That dog was a nightmare. Reminds me of Cousin Fenrir, Harrison mused as they climbed the stairs to their dormitory. Except he only has 2 heads. Medical condition. Back in their beds, while Ron quickly fell asleep, Harrison lay awake, Thing perched on his headboard keeping watch. The 3-headed dog, the trapdoor, the timing of it all, someone was hiding something valuable at Hogwarts, something worth protecting with a monstrous guard dog. Harrison smiled into the darkness. His father had always encouraged him to seek out mysteries, to embrace the unknown. It seemed Hogwarts had mysteries in abundance, and he was just getting started. Chapter 2, Blood Thicker Than Water. Halloween approached Hogwarts with a crisp chill that made the ancient stones creak. Harrison Addams breathed it in like perfume as he stood at the window of the Gryffindor common room, watching bats circle the towers against the purple evening sky. "Best time of year," he murmured to Thing, who sat on his shoulder making appreciative gestures. "Mother says the veil between worlds thins. Makes communion with the ancestors easier." Behind him, Ron and Hermione were arguing over Charm's homework. 2 months into their first term, the trio had formed an unlikely but effective alliance. Ron brought strategic thinking and wizarding world knowledge, Hermione contributed academic brilliance and research skills, and Harrison brought perspectives that neither of them had ever encountered before. "You're holding your wand too tightly," Hermione insisted, watching Ron attempt to levitate a feather. "It's Wingardium Leviosa, not Leviosa." I know, Ron grumbled. "You've only told me 50 times. Harrison turned from the window. "In my family, we just ask objects to rise." Both friends looked at him. "What do you mean, ask?" Hermione questioned. "Everything has consciousness if you know how to access it," Harrison explained, approaching the table where they worked. He placed his hand over the feather without touching it and whispered something in a language neither recognized. The feather trembled, then rose slowly into the air without Harrison using his wand at all. "That's impossible," Hermione breathed. "Wandless magic is incredibly advanced." "Not wandless," Harrison corrected as the feather settled back down. "Different magic. Family magic." "Wicked," Ron said, impressed despite having seen Harrison perform similar feats before. "Could you teach me?" "It requires certain genetic predispositions," Harrison explained. "Blood access." "There you go with the blood stuff again," Ron shook his head. "Sometimes you sound like a Slytherin." Harrison smiled slightly. The Sorting Hat considered it. This revelation was interrupted by Neville tumbling through the portrait hole, his legs locked together by what was clearly a leglocker curse. Most of the common room erupted in laughter as he hopped like a rabbit toward them. Harrison immediately drew his wand and performed the counter-curse with a casual flick. "Malfoy?" he asked as Neville's legs sprang apart. "How'd you know?" Neville asked miserably. "He's developing a signature style," Harrison replied. "Lacks creativity, but shows commitment." "You should report him," Hermione urged. "No," Harrison said firmly, helping Neville to a chair. "We handle this ourselves." "Gran always says to stand up for myself," Neville sighed, "but I'm rubbish at it." Harrison studied Neville thoughtfully, then reached into his robes and withdrew a small black pouch. "Here. My sister made this before I left home." "What is it?" Neville asked nervously. "Protection powder. Throw it at your attacker's feet and step back quickly." "Is it dangerous?" Neville looked terrified. "Not permanently," Harrison assured him. "Just memorable." Ron eyed the pouch with healthy suspicion. "What exactly does it do?" "Creates an illusion of the user's darkest fear," Harrison explained. Lasts about 30 seconds. Wednesday uses it on door-to-door salesmen. Hermione looked scandalized. That can't be legal. Perfectly legal, Harrison countered. It's classified as a harmless deterrent since it causes no physical damage. Brilliant, Ron grinned. Imagine Malfoy screaming about spiders or something. Neville still seemed uncertain but accepted the pouch with tentative gratitude. The next morning brought Harrison's first Quidditch match. Oliver would have been training the team relentlessly, determined to finally win the Quidditch Cup with his secret weapon, the youngest Seeker in a century. In the changing room, Harrison examined his scarlet Quidditch robes with interest. Reminds me of the ceremonial garb my father wears for blood moon rituals, he commented. Fred and George Weasley exchanged amused glances. Always a cheerful thought before a match, Fred quipped. Speaking of blood, George added, try not to spill too much of yours today, yeah. These Slytherins play dirty. I'm not concerned about blood loss, Harrison replied, strapping on his arm guards. The Addams healing rate is exceptional. Oliver gave his usual pre-match speech, which culminated in a passionate, get the snitch or die trying, that Harrison took rather more literally than intended. Not actually die, Oliver clarified, seeing Harrison's thoughtful expression. Figure of speech. Pity, Harrison murmured. That would have added meaningful stakes. As they marched onto the field, the roar of the crowd filled Harrison's ears. He spotted Ron and Hermione in the stands, holding a banner that flashed, "Fly like the wind, Harrison," in letters that occasionally dripped what looked suspiciously like blood. Did you enchant that? Ron was asking Hermione as Harrison scanned the crowd with his unnaturally sharp eyesight. The color changing, yes, Hermione admitted. The dripping effect is new. In the teacher's stands, Harrison noted Professor Snape watching him with his usual inscrutable expression. Beside him sat Professor Quirrell, whose turban looked particularly tight today. Harrison's scar gave an uncomfortable twinge when their eyes met briefly. Madame Hooch's whistle blew, and 15 brooms rose into the air. Harrison climbed higher than the others, scanning for the golden snitch as Wood had instructed. The Nimbus 2000 his parents had sent. We were going to get you the clean sweep, darling, but your father felt the ominous name was more fitting, responded to his lightest touch. The match began in earnest below him, Lee Jordan's commentary punctuated by Professor McGonagall's occasional reprimands. Harrison circled above the action, watching with detached interest as the Slytherin team employed increasingly brutal tactics. Harrison! Wood shouted as he blocked a shot. Focus! Any sign of the snitch? Just then, Harrison's broom gave a sudden, violent lurch. It happened again, as if the broom was trying to buck him off. His exceptional balance kept him seated, but the broom was now zigzagging through the air, making sharp, jerky movements that no broomstick should make on its own. Something's wrong with Addams's broom, someone in the crowd shouted as the Nimbus began rolling over and over, with Harrison somehow managing to hold on. In the stands, Hermione grabbed Ron's binoculars and started scanning the crowd. What are you doing? Ron asked, pale with worry. I knew it, Hermione gasped. Look, Snape. Ron looked through the binoculars. Snape was staring unblinkingly at Harrison, muttering continuously under his breath. He's jinxing the broom. Hermione whispered. What do we do? Leave it to me. As Hermione disappeared into the crowd, Harrison's situation grew more precarious. The broom was vibrating so hard it was almost impossible to hang on. Yet his expression remained eerily calm, almost curious, as if this were merely an interesting new experience rather than a life-threatening situation. When the broom suddenly flipped upside down, Harrison simply hung from it with one hand, dangling 50 feet above the ground. The crowd gasped collectively. Bit inconvenient, Harrison muttered to himself. With his free hand, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a tiny vial of luminous green liquid that thing had been carrying. Using his teeth to remove the stopper, he managed to splash 3 drops onto the broom handle. The effect was immediate. The broom shuddered violently, then went completely rigid before slowly rotating right side up, allowing Harrison to swing back into a proper sitting position. Family recipe, he explained to Fred and George, who had flown closer in case he fell. Grandmama's anti-hex solution. At that exact moment, in the stands, Hermione had reached Snape and set his robes on fire with a carefully aimed spell. In the ensuing chaos, Harrison's broom stopped trying to kill him entirely. With control restored, Harrison suddenly spotted a golden glimmer near the Slytherin goal posts. He dived, accelerating toward the ground with alarming speed. The Slytherin seeker, Marcus Flint, tried to follow but couldn't match Harrison's fearless descent. 20 feet from the ground, Harrison extended his hand toward the fluttering snitch. 10 feet, 5. He was so focused on the golden ball that he didn't notice the bludger racing toward him until the last second. It clipped his shoulder with bone-crushing force, spinning him sideways off his broom. Harrison hit the ground with a sickening thud and rolled several times before stopping in a crumpled heap. The stadium went silent. Then, to everyone's amazement, he sat up, looking merely annoyed at the interruption. Even more astonishingly, he opened his mouth and spat out the golden snitch. "I caught it," he announced calmly, holding up the struggling golden ball. "With my teeth." The Gryffindor stands erupted in wild cheers as Madame Hooch's whistle signaled the end of the match. Harrison stood, dusting himself off as his teammates landed around him, looking both thrilled and concerned. "Are you all right?" Wood demanded, eyeing the unnatural angle of Harrison's left shoulder. "That bludger hit you hard, and that fall." "Perfectly functional," Harrison replied, casually popping his dislocated shoulder back into place with a nauseating crack that made several teammates wince. "Addamses are quite durable." After changing back into his school robes, Harrison joined Ron and Hermione for the traditional post-match celebration in Gryffindor Tower. As they walked across the grounds, Hermione explained her theory about Snape jinxing his broom. "It wasn't Snape," Harrison said confidently. "It was Quirrell." "What?" Ron exclaimed. Professor Quirrell. He can barely string two words together." "An effective disguise," Harrison noted. "My Uncle Fester pretended to be mute for 3 years to avoid paying taxes." "But I saw Snape," Hermione insisted. "He wasn't blinking, and he was muttering, counter jinx," Harrison corrected. "My broom stabilized slightly when he started, then went completely wild when you interrupted him." Hermione looked horrified. "You mean I actually helped whoever was trying to hurt you?" "Don't worry about it," Harrison shrugged. "My family's emergency potions kit handled the situation." "But why would Quirrell want to kill you?" Ron asked. Harrison touched his lightning scar thoughtfully. "I have theories." Before he could elaborate, they spotted a large figure moving furtively toward the forbidden forest. "Is that Hagrid?" Ron squinted. "Indeed," Harrison confirmed. "Carrying what appears to be a dead rooster." This observation proved accurate when they caught up with the gamekeeper, who seemed startled to encounter them. "What are you three doin' here?" he asked gruffly, attempting to hide the deceased bird behind his back. "Just won my first Quidditch match," Harrison explained. "And you're disposing of evidence." "Evidence?" Hagrid sputtered. "What are ya on about?" "The rooster," Harrison nodded toward Hagrid's poor attempt at concealment. "Third one this month, judging by the shallow graves near your pumpkin patch." Hagrid gaped at him. "How did ya?" "I recognize burial patterns," Harrison explained. "Family hobby." Flustered, Hagrid invited them to his hut for tea, perhaps to change the subject. Inside the cramped but cozy dwelling, as Hagrid prepared rock cakes that lived up to their name, the conversation inevitably turned to the three-headed dog. "How do you know about Fluffy?" Hagrid demanded when Hermione mentioned it. "Fluffy?" Ron repeated incredulously. "Yeah, he's mine," Hagrid said proudly. "Bought him off a Greek feller I met in the pub last year." "Magnificent specimen," Harrison commented. "My mother would adore him." She has a passion for creatures with surplus limbs or heads. Hagrid looked momentarily flattered before remembering to be stern. Now, don't go a-skin about what he's garden. That's between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. He caught himself too late. I shouldn't have said that. Nicholas Flamel, Harrison repeated thoughtfully. The alchemist. Hagrid looked alarmed. You know about Flamel? Grandmama corresponded with him in the 1880s, Harrison explained. She was interested in his work on the Philosopher's Stone. Hermione gasped. Of course. The stone that can transform any metal into gold and produces the elixir of life. That's what Fluffy's guarding. Ron asked excitedly. I never said, Hagrid began, but Harrison cut him off. It makes perfect sense. An object of that power would require exceptional protection. Now, listen to me, all three of ya, Hagrid said firmly. You're meddlin' in things that ought not be meddled in. What that dog's garden is strictly between Professor Dumbledore and Nicholas Flamel. But if someone's trying to steal it, Hermione began. No one's trying to steal it, Hagrid insisted. It's perfectly safe. Now forget about it, understand? They promised to drop the subject, though all three knew they would do nothing of the sort. As December arrived, bringing snow and ice to Hogwarts, Professor McGonagall came around with the list of students staying for Christmas. Harrison, to everyone's surprise, signed up immediately. Not going home for the holidays? Ron asked, having assumed Harrison would want to see his unusual family. A slow smile spread across Harrison's face. They're coming here. What? Hermione looked alarmed. Families don't visit Hogwarts for Christmas. Mine does, Harrison replied simply. Father wrote to Dumbledore. Apparently, they were acquainted during the Global Wizarding War. Your dad knew Dumbledore? Ron asked, impressed. Great-Aunt Frumpella was being hunted by Grindelwald's forces. Something about a cursed music box. Dumbledore provided sanctuary. This revelation was still being processed when the morning mail arrived, bringing with it a large black envelope that emitted a faint humming sound. It was delivered by Nevermore, who took time to steal several strips of bacon and snap menacingly at Seamus Finnegan before departing. Harrison opened the envelope carefully, releasing a puff of purple smoke that formed a tiny skull before dissipating. Inside was a letter written in red ink on black parchment. It's confirmed, he announced after reading it. The family arrives on December 23rd. The whole family? Ron asked nervously, having heard numerous stories about the Addamses over the past months. Mother, father, Wednesday, Pugsley, grandmama, Uncle Fester, Lurch, and cousin ITT, Harrison listed. Thing has a twin brother who might join as well. Hermione looked horrified. 2 disembodied hands. Thing 2 specializes in foot massages, Harrison explained. Very therapeutic after duels. The news of the Addams family's impending arrival spread through Hogwarts like wildfire. Students who had heard Harrison's casual mentions of his family's habits regarded the upcoming visit with a mixture of terror and fascination. The teachers seemed equally concerned, particularly after Dumbledore announced at dinner that special accommodations would be made for the esteemed Addams family during the holiday week. Addams? Professor McGonagall had repeated, looking uncharacteristically alarmed. Surely not the same Addams family that was banned from the International Confederation of Wizards after the incident of 1932. The very same, Minerva, Dumbledore confirmed, his eyes twinkling. Though I believe all charges were eventually dropped due to lack of surviving witnesses. As December 23rd approached, Harrison noticed increased activity among the Hogwarts house elves, who were preparing a special suite of rooms in the East Tower. According to Nearly Headless Nick, these chambers hadn't been used since the Middle Ages when they had housed a particularly violent delegation of vampire counts. Perfect accommodations, Harrison approved when he visited to check the arrangements. Mother appreciates a good dungeon aesthetic. The day of arrival brought unexpected thunder and lightning despite the clear forecast, a phenomenon Harrison recognized immediately. "They're here," he announced to Ron and Hermione as a bolt of lightning struck the astronomy tower with unnatural precision. The three friends hurried down to the entrance hall, where a small crowd of curious students and staff had already gathered. Outside, a remarkable vehicle was approaching through the gates. It resembled an ancient hearse, black and ornate, but it moved without horses, gliding several feet above the ground. Green flames occasionally shot from exhaust pipes mounted on either side, and the entire vehicle was surrounded by a miniature storm cloud that rained only on the hearse itself. "Great Uncle Fiendish Transport," Harrison explained proudly. "Been in the family for generations." The hearse came to a halt before the castle steps, its doors creaking open of their own accord. The first to emerge was Lurch, ducking his enormous frame through the door, his pallid face impassive as he surveyed the castle. "Impressive building," he groaned in his bass voice, causing several first-years to jump in fright. Following Lurch came Gomez and Morticia, looking exactly as they had on the platform, despite the months that had passed. Gomez wore his finest pinstriped suit with a blood-red carnation, while Morticia's floor-length black gown seemed to move with shadows of its own. "Harrison, my boy!" Gomez shouted, arms wide. "Look, cara mia. He's grown positively macabre." The pallor of serious study, Morticia approved, extending her arms to embrace her son. "How wonderful!" Wednesday and Pugsley emerged next, Wednesday looking as solemn as ever in her black dress and braids, Pugsley carrying what appeared to be a small cannon under one arm. "We brought your favorite medieval torture devices," Wednesday informed Harrison flatly. "The Iron Maiden missed you." Uncle Fester bounded out next, his bald head gleaming in the magical torchlight of the entrance hall. "Harrison! Have you found any good dungeons? Any secret passages? Any unexplained deaths?" He asked these questions with increasing excitement. Grandmama followed, carrying a large cauldron that emitted green smoke and occasional sparks. "I brought my special stew," she cackled. "Guaranteed to give you visions of your own demise." Last to emerge was Cousin Itt, a walking mass of long hair with tiny bowler hat perched on top. He made a series of unintelligible sounds that somehow conveyed enthusiasm. "Quite right, Itt," Gomez agreed. "Magnificent place for dark magic." The Hogwarts staff looked collectively stunned, except for Dumbledore, whose eyes twinkled with amusement, and Snape, who seemed to be evaluating whether the newcomers might have useful potion ingredients on their persons. "Albus!" Gomez exclaimed, striding forward to pump the headmaster's hand vigorously. "Looking spry for a man of your advanced years. What's your secret? Blood of virgins? Unicorn tears? Merely lemon drops and good cheer, Gomez," Dumbledore replied serenely. "Welcome to Hogwarts. It's been far too long." "Not since that unpleasantness with Grindelwald," Gomez agreed. "Nasty business. Though I did enjoy the dueling." Morticia glided forward, extending a pale hand which Dumbledore kissed gallantly. "Hogwarts is exactly as foreboding as you described, headmaster. Those gargoyles by the entrance have exquisite expressions of agony." "I'm pleased you approve," Dumbledore smiled. "Allow me to introduce my colleagues." As Dumbledore presented the Hogwarts staff, Harrison noticed various reactions. Professor McGonagall maintained rigid politeness, though her lips had nearly disappeared into a thin line. Professor Flitwick seemed academically fascinated, particularly by Cousin Itt. Professor Sprout looked horrified when Grandmama began questioning her about her most poisonous plants. And Quirrell, Harrison noted with interest, had gone even paler than usual, his eyes darting nervously toward the Addams family while his hands trembled visibly. Most intriguing was Snape's reaction. The potions master studied the Addamses with undisguised curiosity, particularly Morticia, whose knowledge of deadly plants he seemed to respect after a brief exchange about the properties of belladonna. "These are my best friends," Harrison introduced Ron and Hermione, who had been watching the proceedings with wide eyes. "Ron Weasley and Hermione Granger." "Ah! New blood." Gomez declared cheerfully, shaking Ron's hand so vigorously the boy's entire body vibrated. Pleasure to meet Harrison's allies. Granger, Morticia repeated, studying Hermione. Not related to the Manchester Grangers, with their delightful collection of cursed music boxes? No, Hermione managed. My parents are dentists. Tooth extractors. Gomez exclaimed delightedly. Wonderful profession. Pain and blood in equal measure. We use anesthetic, Hermione clarified weakly. How modern, Morticia murmured, sounding vaguely disappointed. The Addams family's installation in the East Tower was accomplished with surprising efficiency, lurch-moving trunks that would have required 3 ordinary men to lift. Harrison gave his family a tour of the castle, pride evident in his voice as he showed off the moving staircases, the talking portraits, and the ghost-inhabited corridors. Magnificent specimens, Morticia approved as nearly headless Nick demonstrated his partial decapitation. So vibrant for the deceased. The Great Hall had been decorated for Christmas with 12 towering trees and magical snow falling from the enchanted ceiling. The Addams family took seats at the Gryffindor table for dinner, creating a surreal scene as students tried not to stare at Fester attempting to insert an entire turkey leg into his ear. Tell me, Harrison, Gomez said between enthusiastic bites of roast beef, have you explored the Forbidden Forest yet? Family tradition, forbidden places. Not yet, Harrison admitted. Though I've heard there are werewolves. Excellent. Gomez exclaimed. Your cousin Faustus was half werewolf, you know. Terrible table manners, but what a tenor voice. I've been busy investigating other mysteries, Harrison explained, lowering his voice. There's a 3-headed dog guarding a trapdoor in the 3rd-floor corridor. Rather than showing concern, the entire Addams family looked delighted. A Cerberus. Morticia clasped her hands. How marvelous. I've always wanted to cultivate one in the conservatory. It's guarding a philosopher's stone, Harrison continued. We believe someone is trying to steal it. Intrigue. Danger. Potential fatalities. Gomez slapped the table enthusiastically. You found your place here, my boy. Wednesday stared at Harrison with her usual intensity. Have you discovered any secret chambers? Mother says all proper magical schools have chambers where terrible events occurred. Working on it, Harrison assured her. The castle is full of secrets. Pugsley, meanwhile, had been examining the enchanted ceiling with disturbing focus. Could we make it rain fire instead of snow? He asked hopefully. The feast concluded with Dumbledore leading everyone in Christmas carols, during which the Addams family contributed their own unique verses about Yuletide beheadings and festive poisonings. Even Professor McGonagall seemed to soften slightly when Gomez and Morticia performed an impromptu tango between the house tables, their grace and obvious passion for each other drawing reluctant applause. Later that evening, as Harrison sat with his family in their tower accommodations, Gomez pulled him aside for a private conversation. We've been researching your birth family, he said, twirling his mustache thoughtfully. Fascinating history, the Potters. What have you found? Harrison asked. They were indeed distant relatives, Gomez confirmed. Through the Black family, as we suspected. Your grandmother, Doria Potter, née Black, was a second cousin twice removed from my great-uncle Vlad's wife Esmeralda. So I truly am an Addams by blood, Harrison said, satisfaction in his voice. Without question. Gomez declared. Though deluded through generations of increasingly respectable wizards. He shuddered dramatically. The things family will do for social acceptance. Morticia joined them, placing a cold hand on Harrison's shoulder. Your birth parents were known for their opposition to the Dark Lord, she said. Their deaths were significant. The killing curse rebounded, Harrison said, touching his scar. That's what Hagrid told me. Unprecedented, Gomez mused. A magical anomaly. Perhaps something in your blood, our blood, created a natural resistance. Or perhaps, Morticia suggested, her voice even softer than usual, "it was something your mother did. A protection spell of extraordinary power." "Blood magic?" Harrison asked. "The most ancient kind," Morticia confirmed. "The sacrifice of one's life for another creates protection that even the darkest wizards cannot penetrate." For a moment, Harrison felt an unfamiliar emotion, a connection to the mother he had never known, who had died to save him. It was strange to think that before Morticia, there had been another mother who loved him enough to die for him. "Now," Gomez said brightly, breaking the solemn mood, "about this philosopher's stone business. Protecting valuable artifacts is well and good, but putting it in a school full of children seems like an invitation for disaster." "Delicious disaster," Morticia corrected with a small smile. "We think Professor Quirrell is trying to steal it," Harrison explained. "He tried to jinx me off my broom during a Quidditch match." "Did he now?" Gomez looked outraged. "Bad form. If you're going to murder someone, look them in the eye when you do it." "We've been researching protections that might be guarding the stone," Harrison continued. "Besides Fluffy, the three-headed dog. We could help," Wednesday offered from her position by the fire, where she had been teaching Marie Antoinette to strike on command. "I've read 17 books on breaking and entering this semester." "Educational reading," Morticia approved. "A family expedition," Gomez declared excitedly. "Breaking into forbidden areas, risking life and limb, potentially facing dark wizards, what better way to spend Christmas?" Harrison considered this. While part of him wanted to include his family in the adventure, another part, perhaps the Potter in him, felt responsible for protecting them from whatever dangers lay ahead. "Let me gather more information first," he suggested diplomatically. "We still don't know what other protections are in place." "Wise caution," Morticia nodded. "Though do remember, darling, Addamses thrive on recklessness." Christmas morning arrived with a fresh layer of snow and a pile of presents at the foot of each bed in Gryffindor Tower. Harrison, who had returned to his dormitory to exchange gifts with Ron, found more packages than he had expected. Ron's family had sent him a hand-knitted sweater in dark green, Mom makes them every year, and homemade fudge. Hermione had given him a rare book on ancient family magics. Hagrid contributed a roughly carved wooden flute. From his own family came an assortment of wonderfully inappropriate gifts, a set of silver throwing knives from Gomez, for dueling or dessert, a rare carnivorous plant from Morticia, feed it weekly with fresh meat, a small explosive device from Pugsley, a cursed music box from Wednesday that played haunting lullabies, and from Grandmama, a collection of potions labeled only with skull and crossbones symbols. The final package was long and thin, wrapped in plain brown paper without a note. When Harrison unwrapped it, a magnificent broomstick rolled out. "That's a Nimbus 2000. Ron gasped. "Who sent you that?" Harrison examined the broom carefully, finding no card. "Unknown benefactor. Could be Dumbledore," Ron suggested. "He sent me something too, look." Ron held up a silvery, fluid-like garment that Harrison recognized immediately. "An invisibility cloak," he said with appreciation. "Quite rare." "There was a note," Ron said, reading from a small card. "Your father left this in my possession before he died. Use it well." "My father?" Harrison repeated, taking the note. "James Potter had an invisibility cloak." "Must be," Ron agreed. "Blimey, that's a family heirloom, that is. They're really valuable and rare." Harrison examined the cloak with new interest. This had belonged to his birth father, a tangible connection to the man who had died protecting him. He draped it around his shoulders, watching with satisfaction as his body vanished from sight. "This will be useful for nighttime explorations," he noted. Their gift exchange was interrupted by the arrival of the Weasley twins, who had received their own Weasley sweaters and insisted on escorting Harrison and Ron down to Christmas breakfast. The Great Hall was magnificent, with enchanted snow falling from the ceiling and the 12 Christmas trees glittering with magical decorations. The Addams family was already present, Gomez and Fester engaged in what appeared to be a fencing match using Christmas crackers as rapiers. "Merry Christmas, darling," Morticia greeted Harrison. "Did you receive our modest tokens?" "They're perfect," Harrison assured her. "Especially the carnivorous plant. I thought it would remind you of home," she said fondly. "It's a distant cousin of my African strangler." Christmas dinner was a spectacular affair. The house elves outdid themselves with roast turkeys, mountains of potatoes, buttered peas, silver boats of gravy, and wizard crackers that exploded with much more force than the Muggle variety. Harrison pulled one with Ron and was rewarded with a cloud of blue smoke, several live mice, which Marie Antoinette immediately pursued, and a rear admiral's hat. Grandmama had insisted on contributing to the feast, presenting a tureen of bubbling green stew to the head table with a flourish. "My special recipe," she cackled. "Guaranteed to show you visions of the future, or possibly cause vivid hallucinations." Dumbledore, to everyone's surprise, served himself a generous portion and declared it delightfully mind-altering, after his beard temporarily turned purple. The afternoon brought a massive snowball fight on the grounds, with the Weasley twins bewitching snowballs to follow Quirrell around, bouncing off the back of his turban. Uncle Fester demonstrated his ability to create explosive snow sculptures, while Wednesday calmly built a perfect replica of a guillotine, complete with functioning blade made of ice. As evening fell, Harrison found himself walking with his parents around the snow-covered grounds, the three of them comfortable in the growing darkness. "You seem happy here, Harrison," Morticia observed. "Despite the distressing lack of decay in the dormitories." "I am," Harrison admitted. "I've found friends who accept me, even with my peculiarities." "Peculiarities?" Gomez laughed. "Nonsense. You're an Addams. Peculiarity is our defining trait." "And yet," Harrison continued thoughtfully, "I'm also learning about my Potter heritage. It's strange to balance both identities." "Blood is blood," Morticia said softly. "Whether Potter or Addams, it flows through your veins with equal power. You honor both families by embracing all aspects of yourself." Besides, Gomez added cheerfully, the Potters were quite respectable wizard stock. Brave, talented, occasionally unhinged, all excellent qualities. As they completed their circuit of the lake, Harrison felt a sense of peace. The Addamses had never tried to erase his past or hide his origins. They had embraced him fully, allowing him to be both Harrison Addams and Harry Potter without conflict. "I have something to show you tonight," Harrison told them. "After everyone is asleep. A discovery I made recently." Morticia's eyes gleamed with interest. "How mysterious. We shall await your summons." Near midnight, Harrison retrieved the invisibility cloak from his trunk and slipped out of Gryffindor Tower. He made his way to the East Tower, where his family was still awake, Gomez and Fester playing a game that resembled chess but involved small explosions with each captured piece. "Ah, invisible arrival," Gomez declared as Harrison removed the cloak. "Most dramatic. I want to show you something I discovered last week," Harrison explained. "It's in an unused classroom not far from here." Under the expanded invisibility cloak, Harrison led his parents through the silent corridors of Hogwarts. Wednesday and Pugsley had been left behind under Uncle Fester's supervision, a decision that Harrison suspected might result in minor structural damage to the East Tower, but some risks were worth taking. The unused classroom was exactly as Harrison had left it, desks and chairs pushed against the walls, and in the center, a magnificent mirror as tall as the ceiling with an ornate gold frame, standing on two clawed feet. The inscription across the top read, "Erist stra eru oit ube kafru oit onwosi." "I show not your face but your heart's desire," Morticia translated smoothly. "A dangerous artifact." "Look," Harrison invited, stepping in front of the mirror. In the reflection, he saw himself, but not alone. Behind him stood a crowd of people. Directly at his shoulders were four figures, Gomez and Morticia on one side, and on the other, a man who looked remarkably like an older version of Harrison, with the same untidy black hair, and a beautiful woman with bright green eyes just like his own. "What do you see?" Gomez asked curiously. "All of you," Harrison replied softly. "My Addams family and my Potter parents, together. United." Morticia placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The mirror shows what we most desire, darling. Not reality." "I know," Harrison nodded. "But it shows me something important, that I don't have to choose between my identities. I can honor both." "What wisdom from one so young," came a voice from the shadows. All three turned to see Albus Dumbledore emerging from the darkness, his half-moon spectacles gleaming in the moonlight streaming through the windows. "Albus!" Gomez exclaimed. "Midnight wandering? A man after my own heart. I have been expecting young Mr. Addams to find this mirror," Dumbledore admitted. "Though I confess, I did not anticipate a family viewing." "The mirror is quite remarkable," Morticia observed. "Ancient magic." "Indeed," Dumbledore agreed. "The mirror of Erist shows us nothing more or less than the deepest, most desperate desire of our hearts." "What do you see when you look in it, Professor?" Harrison asked boldly. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. I see myself holding a pair of thick, woolen socks. One can never have enough socks." Harrison tilted his head slightly, sensing the evasion but not pressing further. "The mirror will be moved to a new home tomorrow," Dumbledore continued. "I ask that you not go looking for it again. It does not do to dwell on dreams and forget to live." "Wise counsel," Morticia murmured. "Though dreams do add such delicious spice to living." "Indeed they do, Mrs. Addams," Dumbledore smiled. "Now, perhaps you should all return to your respective beds. Even the most understanding headmaster must enforce some rules." As they made their way back through the corridors, Harrison noticed his father walking particularly close to his mother, their hands intertwined. "What did you see in the mirror?" he asked them curiously. Gomez and Morticia exchanged a glance filled with such intensity that Harrison almost felt he should look away. "Exactly what we already have," Gomez replied finally. "Our family, together and thriving in darkness." "Though perhaps with a few more ravens," Morticia added with the ghost of a smile. The Addams family's departure after the new year was a memorable event. Uncle Fester insisted on leaving a little surprise in the dungeons, which turned out to be an enchanted suit of armor programmed to recite increasingly morbid poetry at random intervals. Pugsley donated several of his experimental explosives to the Weasley twins, a gesture that made Professor McGonagall visibly anxious. Wednesday left Marie Antoinette with detailed instructions on proper human intimidation techniques. And Cousin Itt contributed an unintelligible but apparently moving speech at the farewell breakfast that reduced Hagrid to tears. "Do remember to write, darling," Morticia instructed Harrison as they prepared to leave. "Especially if you encounter any life-threatening situations. We do so enjoy the excitement. And if you decide to pursue this Philosopher's Stone business," Gomez added, twirling his mustache, "full family support. Nothing says bonding like facing mortal peril together." With final embraces and a promise to return for the summer holidays, the Addams family departed in their floating hearse, leaving behind a castle full of relieved staff, fascinated students, and several unexplained pockets of darkness that seemed to resist all magical light. Harrison watched them go with a curious mixture of emotions. He missed them already, but also felt a renewed sense of purpose. He had a mystery to solve and a heritage to explore. Both his Addams training and his Potter legacy would serve him well in the challenges ahead. The winter term progressed with increasing intensity. Professors piled on homework in preparation for end-of-year exams, Quidditch practices became more frequent as Gryffindor maintained their position in the championship race, and Harrison, Ron, and Hermione continued their investigation of the Philosopher's Stone. One afternoon in late January, they were in the library researching Nicholas Flamel when Neville hopped in, his legs once again locked together by the leglocker curse. "Malfoy," he explained miserably after Hermione performed the counter-curse. "I was outside the library. He said he'd been looking for someone to practice on. Did you use the protection powder? Harrison asked. Neville looked down. I dropped it when he surprised me. Go to Professor McGonagall, Hermione urged. Report him. I don't want more trouble, Neville mumbled. Harrison studied him thoughtfully, then reached into his robes and withdrew a small, ornate dagger with a silver handle shaped like a serpent. Here, he said, offering it to Neville. From my family's collection. Neville's eyes widened in alarm. I can't take that. Not to use, Harrison clarified. For confidence. My father says every wizard should carry something that makes them feel powerful. It's probably against school rules, Hermione pointed out. Only if discovered, Harrison countered. Keep it hidden, Neville. But no, it's there. After some hesitation, Neville accepted the dagger, carefully concealing it in his robes. Thanks, Harrison. You're a strange friend, but a good one. The best kind, Harrison replied with a small smile. Their research continued with limited success until February, when Harrison received an unexpected breakthrough in the form of a chocolate frog card. Dumbledore again, Ron sighed, unwrapping his treat during a study break in the common room. I've got about 6 of him already. Harrison, who had developed a fascination with wizard trading cards despite their lack of poisonous or explosive elements, took the card to examine it. Considered by many the greatest wizard of modern times, he read aloud, Dumbledore is particularly famous for his defeat of the dark wizard Grindelwald in 1945, for the discovery of the 12 uses of dragon's blood, and his work on alchemy with his partner, Nicholas Flamel. Harrison looked up at Hermione, who had gasped and was now frantically rummaging through her book bag. I knew it. I knew I'd read the name somewhere, she exclaimed, pulling out an enormous old book. I checked this out weeks ago for a bit of light reading. Light? Ron questioned, eyeing the massive tome. Hermione ignored him, flipping pages frantically until she found what she was looking for. Nicholas Flamel, she whispered dramatically, is the only known maker of the Philosopher's Stone. We already knew that, Ron pointed out. Yes, but now we have confirmation and details, Hermione said impatiently. The book says the stone will transform any metal into pure gold and produces the elixir of life, which makes the drinker immortal. Immortality, Harrison mused. A powerful motivator for theft. No wonder Snape, or Quirrell, wants it. Ron exclaimed. Anyone would. The question is why it's at Hogwarts, Hermione said thoughtfully. It was kept at Gringotts until recently, according to the Daily Prophet. There was an attempted break-in. Dumbledore is hiding it for Flamel, Harrison concluded. The safest place in Britain, besides Gringotts, is Hogwarts under Dumbledore's protection. But it's not safe if someone inside the castle is trying to steal it, Ron pointed out. Harrison nodded. We need to establish a surveillance routine for the third-floor corridor. And for Professor Quirrell. The 3 friends began taking turns monitoring the forbidden corridor, using Harrison's invisibility cloak. They also tracked Quirrell's movements when possible, noting that the nervous professor seemed to be growing paler and thinner as the weeks passed. Snape, meanwhile, had become increasingly hostile toward Quirrell, often seen confronting him in deserted corridors. During one such encounter that Harrison witnessed while hidden under his cloak, Snape had pinned Quirrell against the wall, demanding to know about his little bit of hocus-pocus. It appears Snape is suspicious of Quirrell as well, Harrison reported back to his friends. He's pressuring him about the stone's protections. So Snape isn't trying to steal it? Ron asked, confused. I don't think so, Harrison said. His aura lacks the desperate quality of someone seeking immortality. Quirrell, however, still feels wrong, Ron muttered. Quirrell's afraid of his own shadow. An effective disguise, Harrison reminded him. As winter melted into spring, Harrison found himself increasingly drawn to the Forbidden Forest. The ancient trees called to him with their secrets, reminding him of the woods behind the Addams mansion where he had spent countless happy hours exploring with Wednesday and Pugsley. One evening near twilight, he slipped away from the castle alone, drawn by the same intuition that had always guided him toward interesting discoveries. Wrapped in his invisibility cloak, he followed a narrow path into the forest, breathing in the rich scent of decaying leaves and damp earth. Deep among the trees, Harrison paused, sensing a disturbance. Ahead in a shadowy clearing, a figure in a hooded cloak was crouched over the body of a unicorn, a magnificent creature even in death, its white coat gleaming in the fading light. The hooded figure was drinking the unicorn's blood. Harrison watched, fascinated rather than repulsed. In his family, blood was sacred, powerful, used in rituals and potions of great significance. But even the Addamses would never harm a unicorn, creatures of pure magic whose blood carried terrible consequences when taken forcibly. The hooded figure sensed his presence, raising its head to reveal silver unicorn blood dripping from beneath the hood. It began to move toward him with unnatural speed. Harrison stood his ground, feeling his scar burn with sudden, blinding pain. The hooded figure was nearly upon him when the sound of hooves made it pause. A centaur burst into the clearing, rearing angrily as the cloaked figure fled into the darkness. "Harry Potter," the centaur greeted, studying Harrison with solemn blue eyes. "You should not be here. The forest is not safe, especially for you." "Harrison Addams," he corrected automatically. "Though I was born Harry Potter, yes. The stars have spoken of you," the centaur continued. "I am Firenze." "You know who that was?" Harrison asked, nodding toward where the figure had disappeared. "Can you think of no one who would want unicorn blood? No one who has waited years to return to power?" "Voldemort," Harrison said without hesitation. Firenze nodded gravely. "Unicorn blood will keep you alive even if you are an inch from death, but at a terrible price. You have slain something pure and defenseless to save yourself, and you will have but a half-life, a cursed life, from the moment the blood touches your lips." "A desperate measure," Harrison agreed. "But not his endgame." "No," Firenze confirmed. "Can you think what is hidden in the school at this very moment?" "The Philosopher's Stone," Harrison replied. "Immortality without the curse." "Precisely." Firenze looked impressed by Harrison's quick understanding. "And now I think you should return to the castle. The forest holds many secrets, some deadlier than others." Harrison allowed Firenze to escort him to the edge of the forest, his mind racing with new information. If Voldemort was at Hogwarts, presumably possessing or controlling Quirrell, then the threat was far greater than he had imagined. He returned to Gryffindor Tower to find Ron and Hermione waiting anxiously. "Where have you been?" Hermione demanded. "We've been worried sick." "Forbidden Forest," Harrison replied calmly, settling into a chair by the fire. "I saw someone drinking unicorn blood." "What?" Ron looked horrified. "Voldemort," Harrison continued, ignoring Ron's flinch at the name. "Working through Quirrell, most likely. He's after the stone." He recounted his conversation with Firenze, watching his friend's expressions shift from shock to fear. "You know who is here?" "At Hogwarts?" Ron whispered, his freckles standing out against his suddenly pale face. "In some form," Harrison nodded. "Likely possessing Quirrell. It would explain the turban, the changes in his behavior, and my scar hurting around him." "We need to go to Dumbledore," Hermione insisted. "Right away." "With what evidence?" Harrison countered. "A midnight forest excursion and a centaur's warning. We need more." "So what do we do?" Ron asked. Harrison's green eyes gleamed in the firelight. "We prepare. And we watch." The approach of final exams brought a wave of stress to Hogwarts students. Hermione created study schedules for all three of them, insisting that passing exams was just as important as preventing Voldemort's return. "If we're expelled for failing, we can't protect the stone, can we?" she pointed out when Ron complained. Harrison approached his studies with the same methodical focus he applied to all challenges. His practical work in charms and transfiguration impressed the professors, though his essays often contained disturbing analogies that Professor McGonagall deemed unnecessarily morbid. Potions remained his strongest subject. Even Snape had difficulty finding fault with his work, though the potions master maintained a cool demeanor toward Harrison, occasionally studying him with an unreadable expression. "He's trying to figure you out," Ron observed after one particularly intense potions class. "Can't decide if you're more Potter or Addams." "An understandable dilemma," Harrison replied. "I haven't fully resolved it myself." The answer came in an unexpected form during their History of Magic exam. As Professor Binns droned on about the International Warlock Convention of 1289, Harrison felt a sharp, blinding pain in his scar. A vision flashed before his eyes, a hooded figure standing before a magnificent mirror, reaching for something inside it. The Mirror of Erist. The stone was hidden in the mirror. Harrison gasped, drawing concerned looks from Ron and Hermione seated nearby. He shook his head slightly, indicating he was all right, and returned to his exam paper. Later, as they walked across the grounds discussing the exam, Harrison shared his realization. "Dumbledore's hidden the stone in the Mirror of Erist," he explained. "A brilliant protection, you can only retrieve it if you don't want to use it." "How do you know?" Hermione asked, skeptical. "I saw it," Harrison replied. "When my scar hurt. A vision." "Blimey," Ron breathed. "Can you always see what you know who is thinking?" "Not thinking," Harrison corrected. "Seeing. And only in tense moments, it seems." "Was he getting the stone?" Hermione asked anxiously. "No," Harrison shook his head. "He was frustrated. The mirror wouldn't yield it to him." As they debated what to do with this information, they spotted Hagrid sitting outside his hut, shelling peas. "Finished your exams?" the gamekeeper called cheerfully as they approached. "Got time for a drink?" Inside Hagrid's sweltering hot hut, they declined the offered tea, too uncomfortable in the heat. "Why is it so hot in here, Hagrid?" Hermione asked, fanning herself. "Oh, that's," Hagrid began, but Harrison had already spotted the answer in the heart of the fire, a large black egg. A dragon egg, he identified immediately. Norwegian Ridgeback, judging by the mottling pattern. Hagrid looked impressed. "That's right. How'd you know?" "My mother has a preserved collection," Harrison explained. "Dragon eggs are rare and strictly controlled." "Where did you get it?" "Won it," Hagrid said proudly. "Lost night in the village, playin' cards with a stranger." Something clicked in Harrison's mind. This stranger, did he ask about Hogwarts? About Fluffy, perhaps? "Well, yeah," Hagrid admitted. "He was interested in what sorta creatures I look after. So I told him, after Fluffy, a dragon would be no problem." "Did he seem particularly interested in Fluffy?" Harrison pressed. "Well, yeah, how many three-headed dogs do you meet, even around Hogwarts? So I told him, the trick with any beast is to know how to calm it. Take Fluffy, for instance. Play him a bit music and he falls straight to sleep." Hagrid looked horrified as he realized what he'd revealed. "I shouldn't ha' told ya that. Forget I said it." But Harrison, Ron, and Hermione were already exchanging alarmed glances. "Who was this stranger, Hagrid?" Harrison asked urgently. "What did he look like?" "Dunno," Hagrid said uneasily. "He kept his hood up." "The final piece," Harrison murmured as they hurried back to the castle. "Quirrell, or Voldemort, now knows how to get past Fluffy." "We've got to go to Dumbledore," Hermione insisted. "This time we have proof." They raced to the headmaster's office, only to be stopped by Professor McGonagall in the entrance hall. "What are you three doing inside on a day like this?" she asked suspiciously. "We need to see Professor Dumbledore," Hermione said breathlessly. "Immediately." Professor Dumbledore left 10 minutes ago, McGonagall informed them, looking surprised. He received an urgent owl from the Ministry of London and flew off for London at once. Harrison's eyes narrowed. Too convenient. I beg your pardon, Mr. Addams. McGonagall's nostrils flared. Someone lured Dumbledore away, Harrison explained. Tonight's the night. I don't know what you're talking about, but, the Philosopher's Stone, Harrison interrupted. It's in danger. McGonagall dropped the books she was carrying. How do you know? Professor, I believe someone is going to try and steal it tonight, Harrison continued calmly. With Dumbledore gone, the timing is perfect. McGonagall stared at them with a mixture of shock and suspicion. Professor Dumbledore will be back tomorrow, she said finally. I don't know how you found out about the stone, but rest assured, it is perfectly well protected. But Professor, that's enough, Ms. Granger. I suggest you all go back outside and enjoy the sunshine. As she walked away, Ron turned to the others in dismay. Now what? We go through the trapdoor tonight, Harrison said simply. Before Quirrell can reach the stone. Are you mad? Ron exclaimed. We're first years. We're the only ones who know, Harrison pointed out. And I have certain advantages. What advantages? Hermione asked skeptically. Harrison smiled slightly. I'm an Addams. That night, after the rest of Gryffindor Tower had gone to sleep, Harrison, Ron, and Hermione met in the common room, prepared for their mission. Harrison had changed from his school robes into the black outfit his parents had given him for Christmas, complete with silver clasps shaped like tiny skulls. We should use the invisibility cloak, Hermione suggested as they finalized their plan. No need, Harrison replied. If we're caught, it's already too late. As they turned to leave, they found Neville standing before the portrait hole in his pajamas, clutching Trevor the Toad. You're going out again, he accused. You'll get Gryffindor in more trouble. Neville, this is important, Hermione pleaded. I won't let you, Neville declared, raising his fists. I'll fight you. Harrison stepped forward. Neville, do you still have the dagger I gave you? Neville nodded warily. Good. Keep it close tonight. There may be danger in the castle. What kind of danger? Neville asked, his defiance wavering. The darkest kind, Harrison replied seriously. We're trying to prevent something terrible. Please, trust us. Neville hesitated, then slowly stepped aside. Be careful, he said finally. And, come back safely. Always do, Harrison assured him. The journey to the third-floor corridor was uneventful, though they had a near miss with Mrs. Norris on the second-floor landing. When they reached the forbidden door, they found it already ajar. Quirrell's already here, Harrison whispered. What about Fluffy? Ron asked nervously. They pushed the door open wider to find the enormous three-headed dog fast asleep, a harp playing softly beside one massive paw. Music, Hermione whispered. Just like Hagrid said. They approached the trapdoor cautiously. When Harrison pulled it open, they found only darkness below. Can't see the bottom, Ron said, peering down. I'll go first, Harrison volunteered. If something happens to me, get back to the Ollery and send Nevermore to my parents. They'll know what to do. Harrison, wait, Hermione began, but he had already jumped. The fall seemed to last forever before Harrison landed on something soft and yielding. He assessed his surroundings quickly, recognizing the plant beneath him just as Ron tumbled down beside him, followed shortly by Hermione. Lucky this plant was here, Ron commented, trying to shift into a more comfortable position. Lucky? Hermione exclaimed. Look at you. Tendrils of the plant had begun wrapping around Ron's legs. Harrison, already half ensnared, remained perfectly calm. Devil's snare, he identified. Mother grows it in the conservatory. Well, do something. Ron shouted as the plant tightened its grip. It responds to fear and struggle, Harrison explained, deliberately relaxing his body. Stay still. It also hates light and warmth. Hermione added, managing to free her wand. She conjured a jet of bluebell flames that caused the plant to recoil, releasing all three of them. They dropped through the devil's snare onto the cold stone floor below. Brilliant, both of you, Ron gasped, brushing tendrils from his robes. They continued down a stone passageway, the only way forward. The sound of rustling and clinking grew louder as they approached the next chamber. Sounds like birds, Ron whispered. But they weren't birds, Harrison realized as they entered a brilliantly lit chamber with a high-arched ceiling. They were keys, hundreds of winged keys, fluttering and tumbling all around the room. On the opposite side stood a heavy wooden door. We need to find the right key, Hermione said, examining the door's large old-fashioned lock. Harrison spotted broomsticks leaning against the wall. We'll have to fly. They each mounted a broom and kicked off into the air, searching the swarm of keys. Harrison, with his seeker's vision, quickly identified their target, a large silver key with bright blue wings, one of which was bent as if it had already been caught and roughly handled. There, he pointed. The damaged one. With practiced precision, Harrison gave chase, cornering the key against the ceiling before closing his fingers around it. Once back on the ground, he inserted it into the lock, and the door swung open. The next chamber was so dark they could hardly see, but as they stepped inside, light suddenly flooded the room, revealing an astonishing sight, an enormous chessboard with pieces taller than they were, carved from black and white stone. Now what? Hermione whispered. Obvious, isn't it? Ron said. We've got to play our way across. Ron, the most skilled chess player among them, directed them to take the places of 3 black pieces. Harrison became a bishop, Hermione a rook, and Ron himself a knight. What followed was the most brutal game of chess Harrison had ever witnessed. The white pieces showed no mercy when capturing the black, smashing them to pieces and dragging the remains off the board. Ron navigated the game with impressive strategy, sacrificing pieces when necessary while keeping Harrison and Hermione safe. Finally, Ron made a difficult decision. I've got to be taken, he announced grimly. No. Hermione protested. That's chess. Ron insisted. I'll move, the queen will take me, and that leaves you free to checkmate the king, Harrison. Before they could argue further, Ron moved forward. The White Queen struck him hard across the head with her stone arm, and he crashed to the floor, unconscious. The Queen dragged Ron's limp form to the side of the board. Fighting the urge to check on his friend, Harrison moved 3 spaces to the left, putting the White King in checkmate. The king's crown fell to the ground with a clatter of surrender. They had won. Harrison and Hermione rushed to Ron's side. He was breathing but out cold, a nasty bruise forming on his temple. He'll be all right, Harrison assessed. Resilient constitution. You go on, Hermione decided after examining Ron. I'll stay with him. Get the stone before Quirrell. Harrison nodded, then surprised her by pulling her into a quick, awkward hug. Take care of him. And yourself. The next chamber contained a troll even larger than the one they had encountered at Halloween, but it was already unconscious, a bloody lump on its head. Quirrell's work, Harrison noted, stepping carefully around the prone creature. The final chamber held a familiar sight, a table with 7 differently shaped bottles standing in a line. As soon as Harrison entered, purple flames sprang up in the doorway behind him, while black flames appeared in the entrance ahead. A roll of parchment lay beside the bottles, containing a logic puzzle. Harrison read it carefully, then examined each bottle in turn. Clever, he murmured. Most wizards have no grasp of logic. After careful consideration, he identified the smallest bottle as the one that would allow him to go forward through the black flames. There was barely enough for one swallow. Harrison raised the tiny bottle in a mock toast. To family, he whispered, then drained the potion in one gulp. It felt like ice flooding his veins. Taking a deep breath, he walked directly through the black flames, feeling them lick harmlessly against his skin. In the final chamber, he found exactly what he expected, the mirror of Eriste standing in the center of the room, and before it, Professor Quirrell. "I wondered if I'd be seeing you here, Potter," Quirrell said, turning to face him. His voice was different, cold and sharp, without a trace of his usual stutter. "Harrison Addams," he corrected automatically. "Though I was born Harry Potter, yes." "Semantics," Quirrell dismissed with a wave of his hand. "How convenient that you should appear now, just as I'm struggling with this final obstacle." "The mirror," Harrison observed, stepping closer. "Dumbledore's trap. You can only retrieve the stone if you don't intend to use it." Quirrell's eyes narrowed. "Clever boy. Perhaps you can help me, then." "Why would I help you deliver the stone to Voldemort?" Harrison asked calmly. Quirrell didn't flinch at the name. "So you've worked it all out?" "Yes, my master is here, with me always." He began unwrapping his turban. "Would you like to meet him?" As the turban fell away, Harrison beheld a terrible sight, a face on the back of Quirrell's head, chalk white with glaring red eyes and slits for nostrils, like a snake. "Harry Potter," it whispered in a chilling voice. "Lord Voldemort," Harrison acknowledged with a slight nod. "You look unwell." A hissing laugh escaped the grotesque face. "Courage, or foolishness. Your parents had the same quality before I killed them." "A point of pride," Harrison replied. "They died protecting me. They died begging for mercy." Voldemort spat. "Now, be useful, boy. Look in the mirror and tell me what you see." Harrison stepped in front of the mirror, curious despite the danger. In the reflection, he saw himself, but this version reached into his pocket and pulled out a blood-red stone. Mirror Harrison winked, then returned the stone to his pocket, and at that same moment, Harrison felt something heavy drop into his real pocket. He had the stone. "Well?" Voldemort demanded impatiently. "What do you see?" Harrison's mind worked rapidly. The truth would be unwise, but a complete lie might be detected. "I see myself," he said carefully. "Surrounded by both my families, the Addamses who raised me, and the Potters who died for me. United in power and purpose." It wasn't entirely false, he had seen a similar vision when he first discovered the mirror. "Useless sentimental rubbish," Voldemort hissed. "He lies. He lies. Let me speak to him face to face," the terrible voice commanded. "Master, you are not strong enough." Quirrell protested. "I have strength enough, for this." Quirrell turned fully, allowing Voldemort to stare directly at Harrison. The red eyes gleamed with hatred. "See what I have become," the face whispered. "Mere shadow and vapor, forced to share another's body. But once I have the elixir of life, I can create a body of my own." Harrison felt his scar burning, but maintained his composure. "An existence of parasitic dependency," he observed. "My family would find that fascinating from an academic perspective." "Your family," Voldemort spat. "Those freaks who stole you away." "Yes, I know of the Addamses. Dark wizards who squander their power on trivial eccentricities instead of true greatness." For the first time, Harrison felt a flicker of genuine anger. "They showed me love," he replied, his voice dangerously soft. "Something you've never known or understood." "Love?" Voldemort laughed coldly. "There is no good or evil, only power and those too weak to seek it. Your adoptive family understood that once, before they became blood traitors." "Enough talk," Quirrell interrupted, turning to face Harrison again. "Give me the stone, Potter." "I don't have it," Harrison lied smoothly. "Seize him," Voldemort commanded. Quirrell lunged forward, wrapping his hands around Harrison's throat. Immediately, a strange and terrible phenomenon occurred. Quirrell screamed in agony, releasing Harrison as his hands began to blister and burn. "My hands," he shrieked. "Master, my hands. Then kill him, fool. Voldemort screamed. As Quirrell raised his wand, Harrison acted on instinct, launching himself forward and pressing his palms against the professor's face. Quirrell howled in agony as his skin burned and blistered at Harrison's touch. Interesting, Harrison observed with clinical detachment, even as he maintained contact. Your body can't endure my touch. My mother's protection, perhaps. Blood magic. Get off. Get off. Quirrell thrashed wildly, his face smoking where Harrison's hands pressed against it. Harrison could feel himself weakening, his vision blurring at the edges, but he held on. This was survival, something the Addams family had taught him well. Use every advantage, exploit every weakness, and never, ever give up. As darkness began to close in around him, Harrison became aware of another presence in the chamber. A figure in purple robes, with a long silver beard. Dumbledore had returned. The last thing Harrison remembered before consciousness slipped away was Voldemort's spirit tearing itself free from Quirrell's disintegrating body, passing through his own chest like a ghost, and a piercing scream that might have been his own. Harrison awoke in the hospital wing, surrounded by what appeared to be half the candy shop from Hogsmeade. Sunlight streamed through the windows, suggesting he had been unconscious for some time. "Ah, you're awake," came Dumbledore's voice from a chair beside the bed. Harrison blinked, focusing on the headmaster's twinkling blue eyes. "How long?" "3 days," Dumbledore replied. "Mr. Weasley and Miss Granger will be relieved. They've been quite worried about you." "The stone?" Harrison asked immediately. "Safe. Nicholas and I have decided it's best to destroy it." "And Quirrell?" "I'm afraid he did not survive your encounter," Dumbledore said gravely. "As for Voldemort, he abandoned Quirrell to die and fled." Harrison nodded, processing this information. "My touch burned him." "Why?" Dumbledore's expression softened. "Your mother died to save you, Harrison. If there is one thing Voldemort cannot understand, it is love. Her sacrifice left a mark on you, not a visible mark, but a protection in your very skin. Quirrell, full of hatred and sharing his soul with Voldemort, could not touch you without suffering terrible pain." "Blood magic," Harrison murmured. "Mother, Morticia, suspected as much." "Indeed," Dumbledore nodded. "Your birth mother's protection flows in your veins, alongside the remarkable Addams bloodline. A powerful combination." Harrison noticed something in Dumbledore's tone. "You knew," he realized. "You knew the Addamses had adopted me." "I suspected," Dumbledore admitted. "Though I must confess, I initially placed you with your aunt and uncle, Lily's sister and her husband. When you vanished from their doorstep that night, I searched frantically. Magical traces led to the Addams residence, but by then, blood adoption rituals had already been performed." "You didn't try to take me back?" Harrison asked, surprised. "I considered it," Dumbledore said honestly. "But when I observed you with the Addams family, I saw something unexpected, genuine love, albeit expressed in rather unconventional ways. The blood wards your mother created would function anywhere you called home with people who loved you. The Addamses, for all their eccentricities, provided that." Harrison felt a wave of gratitude toward the headmaster. "Thank you for allowing me to stay with them." "It was not my place to separate a child from a loving family," Dumbledore replied simply. "Though I did monitor your upbringing from a distance, in case intervention became necessary." "It never did," Harrison stated with certainty. "No," Dumbledore agreed with a small smile. "The Addamses are unusual guardians, but remarkably effective ones. You arrived at Hogwarts with courage, intelligence, and a unique perspective that proved invaluable against Voldemort." Harrison glanced at the mountain of sweets beside his bed. "The candy. Tokens from your admirers," Dumbledore explained. "What happened between you and Professor Quirrell is a secret, so naturally, the entire school knows." "And my friends?" "Ron and Hermione. Both perfectly fine. Mr. Weasley suffered a concussion but was quickly mended by Madame Pomfrey. Dumbledore rose to leave. I shall inform your friends that you are awake. They've been most persistent in their visits. Oh, and you might be interested to know that your family sent this. He indicated a black package on the bedside table that Harrison hadn't noticed. It was wrapped in dark paper and tied with silver ribbon, a small card attached. They were quite concerned, Dumbledore added. Your father offered to bring the family hearse to transport you home, but I assured him our medical facilities were adequate. After Dumbledore departed, Harrison opened the package to find a collection of home remedies from Grandmama, labeled with varying numbers of skull symbols to indicate potency, a slightly scorched get-well card from Pugsley, a preserved bat heart from Wednesday, for renewed strength, and a letter from his parents expressing both concern and pride. Dearest Harrison, news of your confrontation with the fractured soul of a dark wizard reached us through Dumbledore's fire call. What an achievement! Your first mortal enemy at just 11. We couldn't be prouder. Your mother has been beside herself with worry, 3 seances and a blood ritual already, though we're assured you're recovering well. The family cemetery has been unusually active, the ancestral spirits sense your triumph. We've enclosed some of Grandmama's special healing potions. The one with 3 skulls will regrow bones if needed, though it may cause temporary speaking in tongues. The green vial is strictly for emergencies. Last time Uncle Fester took it, he glowed for a week and attracted unusual insects. Rest and recover, darling. We shall see you at King's Cross when term ends. With deepest pride and affection, Morticia and Gomez Harrison smiled, tracing the familiar handwriting with his fingertips. Even from a distance, his family's love sustained him, unconventional, occasionally alarming, but never doubted. Ron and Hermione burst into the hospital wing moments later, their faces lighting up at seeing him awake. Harrison! Hermione exclaimed, barely restraining herself from hugging him. We were so worried. Mate, you should have seen Dumbledore's face when he found you, Ron added. Never seen him run so fast. They filled him in on what had happened after he'd lost consciousness, how Dumbledore had arrived just in time, how the whole school had been talking about his confrontation with Quirrell, and how Slytherin had won the House Cup in Gryffindor's absence from the final Quidditch match. Doesn't matter, Harrison assured Ron, who seemed particularly upset about the House Cup. We prevented Voldemort's return. That's what counts. You prevented it, Hermione corrected. We just helped you get to him. A team effort, Harrison insisted. Like my family always says, one hand washes the other, and then both hands wash the face. He paused. Though in Thing's case, that's rather literal. The end-of-year feast found Harrison fully recovered and seated between Ron and Hermione at the Gryffindor table. The Great Hall was decked out in Slytherin colors of green and silver, celebrating their 7th consecutive House Cup victory. Dumbledore rose to his feet, and the room fell silent. Another year gone, he announced cheerfully. And now, as I understand it, the House Cup needs awarding, and the points stand thus: in 4th place, Gryffindor with 312 points, 3rd place, Hufflepuff with 352 points, 2nd place, Ravenclaw with 426 points, and in 1st place, Slytherin with 472 points. A storm of cheering broke out from the Slytherin table. Draco Malfoy was banging his goblet on the table in celebration. Yes, well done Slytherin, Dumbledore nodded. However, recent events must be taken into account, and I have some last-minute points to award. The room went very still. First, to Mr. Ronald Weasley, for the best-played game of chess Hogwarts has seen these many years, I award Gryffindor 50 points. Ron's face went purple with shock as Gryffindor cheers nearly raised the enchanted ceiling. Second, to Miss Hermione Granger, for the cool use of logic in the face of fire, I award Gryffindor 50 points. Hermione buried her face in her arms, and Harrison strongly suspected she had burst into tears. Third, to Mr. Harrison Addams, for pure nerve, outstanding courage, and the ability to face the darkest of forces with remarkable composure, I award Gryffindor 60 points. The din was deafening. Gryffindor now tied with Slytherin for the House Cup. Dumbledore raised his hand, and the room gradually fell silent. There are all kinds of courage, he said softly. It takes a great deal of bravery to stand up to our enemies, but just as much to stand up to our friends. I therefore award 10 points to Mr. Neville Longbottom. The explosion of noise that followed was beyond anything they had heard, as Neville, white with shock, disappeared beneath a pile of people hugging him. Harrison, clapping along with everyone else, caught Neville's eye and gave him a rare, genuine smile. Assuming my calculations are correct, Dumbledore called over the applause, a change of decoration is in order. With a clap of his hands, the green and silver hangings became scarlet and gold, the serpent emblem replaced by the towering Gryffindor lion. Harrison observed Malfoy's thunderstruck, horrified expression with mild amusement, though not the vindictive glee some of his housemates displayed. When their eyes met across the hall, Harrison gave Draco a small nod, acknowledgement of a worthy adversary rather than mockery. The celebration in Gryffindor Tower that night continued until dawn, but Harrison slipped away shortly after midnight, seeking solitude in the quiet astronomy tower. There, beneath the vast canopy of stars, he reflected on his first year at Hogwarts. He had discovered his birth heritage, made true friends, faced the wizard who had killed his parents, and found a place where even his Addams' peculiarities could be, if not entirely normal, at least accepted. Things scuttled up to join him, patting his shoulder sympathetically. It's been an interesting year, Harrison told his faithful companion. Mother and father will be pleased with the educational value of mortal peril. As if summoned by his thoughts, a familiar raven appeared on the tower battlements. Nevermore carried a small black envelope in his beak, which he deposited in Harrison's hand before helping himself to an owl treat from Harrison's pocket. The letter inside was brief but meaningful. Harrison, we've heard about your triumph over this Voldemort character. Excellent work. Nothing builds character like facing dark wizards at a young age. We're preparing the mansion for your return, fresh swamp water in your bath, new spiders in your wardrobe, and Wednesday has been cultivating a particularly aggressive strain of Venus flytrap for your room. The ancestors are restless with excitement to hear your tales. Great-grandmother Eudora actually emerged from her tomb briefly, first time since 1947. Until we see you at King's Cross, your proud parents. Harrison folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his pocket. As he gazed up at the stars, he felt a profound sense of belonging, not just to Hogwarts or to the Addams family, but to both worlds simultaneously. Harry Potter and Harrison Addams, no longer separate identities but integrated parts of a whole. Blood called to blood, across death and time. The Addamses had recognized it the night they found him, and now he understood it completely. His birth parents had given him life and protection through their sacrifice, and his adoptive family had given him the strength, confidence, and unique perspective to survive when that protection was tested. Blood is thicker than water, Harrison murmured to the night sky, but family transcends blood. Thing gave him a thumbs up of agreement, and together they watched the stars until the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, heralding the beginning of summer and the adventures that awaited. Chapter 3, Family Secrets. The gleaming scarlet engine of the Hogwarts Express belched steam across platform 9 3/4, nearly obscuring the peculiar family waiting beside a luggage trolley topped with a raven's cage. Gomez Addams bounced on his heels, periodically checking his pocket watch, while Morticia remained perfectly still, her pale face a stark contrast to her flowing black dress. Wednesday stood between them, holding a headless doll and staring unblinkingly at the train. There he is! Gomez shouted as Harrison emerged from a cloud of steam, pushing his trunk with Thing perched atop it like a sentinel. Morticia's red lips curved into a rare smile. Harrison, darling. You look delightfully gaunt. Final exams, Harrison explained as his mother embraced him. Quite draining, especially after the near-death experience. Magnificent. Gomez clapped him on the shoulder. Nothing builds character like brushing against mortality before puberty. Harrison turned to Wednesday, who hadn't moved. Did you miss me? I practiced your funeral 7 times, she replied flatly. Just in case. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. Ron and Hermione approached cautiously, having spotted the reunion from a distance. So you're Harrison's friends, Morticia observed, her dark eyes studying them with unsettling intensity. The ones who helped him face the dark wizard. Ron swallowed hard. Yes, Mrs. Addams. Please, Morticia extended a pale hand. Call me Morticia. Mrs. Addams makes me sound like grandmama. We're very pleased to meet you, Hermione said with surprising composure, shaking Morticia's hand without flinching at its icy temperature. Harrison has told us so much about your family. All good, I hope. Gomez asked with a wink. All terrifying, Ron mumbled. Excellent. Gomez beamed, vigorously pumping Ron's hand. Nothing bonds children like shared trauma. Harrison said his goodbyes, promising to write and perhaps invite his friends to visit the mansion later in the summer, after we deactivate the more lethal security measures, Gomez added helpfully. As they navigated through the barrier to the Muggle side of King's Cross Station, Harrison noticed people staring at his family with the familiar mixture of horror and fascination. He'd grown accustomed to such reactions at Hogwarts, where his Addams mannerisms had initially shocked his classmates. The difference now was that he understood why he had always felt comfortable with such attention. It was his birthright as both an Addams and the boy who lived. Outside the station, Great Uncle Fiendish's ancient hearse awaited, its black exterior gleaming ominously in the summer sunshine. Lurch emerged from the driver's seat, bowing deeply as he took Harrison's trunk. Welcome, home, young master, he groaned, each word emerging like a boulder being pushed uphill. The drive to Cemetery Ridge was filled with eager questions about Harrison's final days at school. He described the end-of-year feast, Gryffindor's last-minute House Cup victory, and the expressions on the Slytherins' faces when the decorations changed. Politics, Gomez nodded sagely. Dumbledore's always had a flair for the dramatic. During the Grindelwald crisis, he once transfigured an entire ballroom of dark wizards into flamingos. Very effective, if somewhat gauche. What about this Malfoy boy you've mentioned? Morticia asked. The one with the unfortunate superiority complex. Draco, Harrison confirmed. He's not as bad as he seems. There's fear beneath the arrogance. Fear is often the root of hatred, Morticia observed. Your capacity to see beyond it speaks well of your judgment, darling. The hearse turned onto the familiar winding road leading up to Cemetery Ridge, where the Addams mansion loomed against the perpetually stormy skyline. Despite spending months in the magnificent Hogwarts castle, Harrison felt a surge of affection at the sight of the dilapidated Gothic structure with its crooked towers and boarded windows. Home, he whispered, and Thane gave his shoulder an affectionate squeeze. The front gates creaked open of their own accord, and the hearse rolled up the weed-choked driveway. Before they even reached the door, it swung open to reveal Pugsley, his round face alight with mischievous excitement. Harrison, he shouted. Come quick. I've got something awesome to show you. Let him get settled first, Pugsley, Morticia chided gently. Your brother has had a long journey. But the tarantula eggs are hatching. Pugsley protested. And I've rigged them to shoot venom when they crack. Harrison grinned. Some things never change. Inside, the mansion welcomed him with its familiar gloom, dust motes dancing in the few rays of light that penetrated the heavy curtains, the mounted bear head growling a greeting, and the grandfather clock chiming 13 as they passed. We've prepared a welcome home feast, Morticia informed him as Lurch shuffled past with his trunk. Grandmama's been cooking all day. I smell arsenic, Harrison noted appreciatively. And just a hint of wolfsbane. Her special roast, Gomez confirmed. With extra hemlock for the growing boy. The feast that evening was everything Harrison had missed about home. The long dining table groaned under the weight of Grandmama's dubious culinary creations, steaming cauldrons of thick, bubbling stew, platters of meat so rare it occasionally twitched, and desserts that smoked ominously when sliced. The entire family gathered to celebrate his return. Uncle Fester demonstrated his latest trick, using his mouth as a battery to power the chandelier. Cousin Itt spoke at length about his recent travels, though only Harrison and his immediate family seemed able to understand the unintelligible hair-covered being. Even Grandmama emerged from her kitchen, bearing a cake shaped like a tombstone with "Welcome Home Harrison" written in what looked suspiciously like blood icing. "Tell us more about this Voldemort character," Uncle Fester urged, leaning forward eagerly. "Is he properly hideous?" "The best villains always are." "Quite," Harrison confirmed. "No nose, red eyes, skin like a corpse. Reminds me of your great-aunt Lavinia after her unfortunate pickling accident," Grandmama cackled. "And he was living on the back of your teacher's head?" Pugsley asked, eyes wide with admiration. "That's so cool." "Not for Professor Quirrell," Harrison pointed out. "He died when Voldemort abandoned him." "Such a waste," Morticia sighed. "A properly preserved host can last decades with the right embalming techniques." As the evening progressed, Harrison found himself relaxing into the familiar rhythms of Addams family life. Here, his casual references to death, darkness, and the macabre weren't met with shocked expressions or nervous laughter, they were simply normal conversation. After dinner, Gomez invited Harrison to his study, a cluttered room filled with exotic weapons, stuffed predators in attack poses, and ancient tomes of questionable origin. "There's something we need to discuss," Gomez said, suddenly serious as he settled into a leather chair that groaned like a dying man. "About your heritage." Morticia glided in behind them, closing the door with a soft click. "We've been researching while you were away," she explained, taking a seat beside her husband. "The connection between the Potter and Addams bloodlines." Harrison sat across from them, noting their uncharacteristically solemn expressions. "You found something significant." "Indeed," Gomez confirmed, pulling an ancient leather-bound book from his desk drawer. "This is the Addams family grimoire, the oldest and most complete version. It records all family members, even those who branched away." Harrison had seen the grimoire before, of course. It was used in family rituals and contained generations of dark magical knowledge. But he'd never been allowed to examine it closely. Gomez opened the book to a marked page, revealing an elaborate family tree inscribed in what appeared to be blood-red ink. He pointed to a name near the middle, Iolanthe Addams. "Your ancestor," Morticia explained. "Born in 1664. She was unusually talented in blood magic, even by Addams standards. She married a Potter," Gomez continued, tracing a line connecting Iolanthe's name to Hardwin Potter. "Thus establishing the first known link between our families." Harrison leaned closer, fascinated. "But the Potters aren't known for dark magic." "That's where it gets interesting," Gomez's eyes gleamed with excitement. "The Potters publicly distanced themselves from the Addams practices, presenting themselves as a respectable wizarding family. But in private," he tapped the grimoire, "they maintained certain traditions." "Blood protection," Harrison murmured, touching his lightning scar. "Like what my mother, Lily, did for me." "Precisely," Morticia nodded. "That magic wasn't standard light wizard fare. It was ancient protection magic, Addams magic, passed down through generations even as the families grew apart." "So I'm not just coincidentally related to the Addamses," Harrison realized. "The blood called to blood that night because we're actually family." "More than family," Gomez said, flipping to another page where a prophecy was written in spidery script. "Destined." Harrison read aloud from the page, "When darkness seeks to claim the light, the severed branch returns. Blood of night and blood of day, in one vessel burns." Written by Desdemona Addams in 1702, Morticia explained. She was a seer of considerable power, though her prophecies tended to manifest in rather messy ways. "You think this refers to me?" Harrison asked. "The severed branch?" "The timing is too perfect to be coincidence," Gomez replied. "The Potters broke from the Addams family centuries ago, becoming the severed branch. And now, the last Potter has returned to the Addams fold, just as a great darkness, Voldemort, seeks to rise again." Harrison considered this information carefully. Is that why you were able to find me that night? Why the family grimoire glowed? Blood magic has a will of its own, Morticia said softly. When Lily Potter died protecting you, her sacrifice, unknowingly using ancient Addams magic, created a beacon that called to the family grimoire. It recognized you as both Potter and Addams. We followed that magical signature, Gomez added. Found you before Dumbledore's people could return. The blood adoption ritual was merely a formality, you were already ours by ancient right. Harrison fell silent, processing the implications. His entire life, he had thought of himself as Harrison Addams with a Potter origin. But now it seemed his identity was more complex, and more integrated, than he had realized. There's more, Morticia said after giving him a moment. The ministry has taken an interest in your living situation. What? Harrison's head snapped up. Why? Apparently, Gomez said, mustache twitching with irritation, some bureaucrat in the Department of Magical Children's Welfare has discovered that the famous Harry Potter is living with the notorious Addams family rather than his ministry-approved Muggle relatives. They want to investigate, Morticia explained calmly, though a dangerous light flickered in her dark eyes. To ensure your well-being. That's ridiculous, Harrison stated flatly. I've been with you for nearly 10 years. Why now? Your return to the wizarding world has made you visible again, Gomez replied. And certain factions within the ministry have always been suspicious of our family's practices. They can't take me away, Harrison said with absolute certainty. I won't allow it. Morticia's red lips curved in a proud smile. Neither will we, darling. An Addams never abandons family. Besides, Gomez added with a wink, the last ministry official who tried to interfere with our parenting is still technically alive, just considerably less ambulatory. When is this investigation happening? Harrison asked. They've scheduled an inspection for next week, Morticia replied. A representative from the department will visit to evaluate our home and interview you. Then we have preparation to do, Harrison said decisively. The following week was spent in careful planning. While the Addams family had no intention of changing their essential nature to please some government official, certain modifications to the mansion were deemed prudent. Lurch was dispatched to temporarily relocate the more aggressive carnivorous plants from the conservatory. Uncle Fester disabled the quicksand trap in the foyer and removed the poison darts from the coat rack. Grandmama reluctantly agreed to keep her experimental potions locked away during the visit. Most significantly, Gomez had several of the more articulate family ghosts agree to make themselves scarce. We're not hiding who we are, he explained to the children. Just, selectively presenting our more digestible quirks. Wednesday was unconvinced. Compromise is surrender, she declared flatly. Not compromise, my little viper, Morticia corrected, brushing Wednesday's braids with a bone comb. Strategy. Sometimes the most direct path to victory requires a temporary detour. The morning of the inspection arrived with unusual sunshine breaking through the perpetual clouds over Cemetery Ridge. The family assembled in the parlor, dressed in their finest, which for the Addamses still meant variations on black, with occasional deep purple or blood red accents. Remember, Gomez instructed as they waited, minimal talk of execution devices, no demonstrations of poison resistance, and please, Pugsley, don't mention the basement experiments. What about the graveyard rituals? Pugsley asked innocently. Ancestral memorial ceremonies, Morticia corrected smoothly. Cultural heritage. At precisely 10 o'clock, the doorbell rang, not the usual funeral gong, but a hastily installed conventional bell. Lurch answered with his most restrained groan, admitting a prim-looking witch in immaculate ministry robes. Ophelia Oldfellow, she introduced herself briskly. Department of Magical Children's Welfare. She consulted a clipboard. I'm here to evaluate the living situation of one Harry James Potter, also known as Harrison Addams. Welcome to our humble abode. Gomez declared, stepping forward to pump her hand enthusiastically. Gomez Addams, at your service. This is my wife Morticia, our children Wednesday and Pugsley, and of course, Harrison. Ms. Oldfellow extracted her hand from Gomez's grip with visible effort. Yes. Well. I'll need to conduct a thorough inspection of your home and interview each family member, particularly young Mr. Potter. Addams, Harrison corrected automatically. Though I was born Harry Potter, yes. The witch's eyes lingered on his lightning scar before she made a note on her clipboard. Semantics. Your legal name in ministry records remains Harry James Potter. Records can be updated, Harrison replied with a pleasant smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Ms. Oldfellow ignored this, turning back to Gomez and Morticia. I understand you, acquired Mr. Potter shortly after the tragedy at Godric's Hollow. We adopted Harrison when he was orphaned, Morticia confirmed, her voice cool. Blood called to blood. Yes, well, there seems to be no official record of this adoption, Ms. Oldfellow sniffed. And according to ministry files, guardianship was assigned to Lily Potter's sister and her husband. Bureaucratic oversight, Gomez waved dismissively. The blood adoption ritual supersedes paperwork. Ms. Oldfellow's eyebrows shot up. Blood adoption ritual. Those have been heavily regulated since 1899 due to their use in inheritance fraud. Our family has certain, traditional exemptions, Morticia replied smoothly. Dating back to the founding of the ministry. The ministry which made another note, her quill scratching furiously. I'll need to verify that. Now, perhaps you could show me the child's living quarters. What followed was an excruciating tour of the Addams mansion, with Ms. Oldfellow's expression growing increasingly horrified despite the family's efforts to present a more conventional appearance. She flinched at the mounted animal heads that followed her with their eyes, paled at the medieval weapons displayed in the hallway, family heirlooms, Gomez explained cheerfully, and nearly fainted when things scuttled across her path in the library. What in Merlin's name was that? She shrieked. Thing, Harrison explained calmly. He's been with the family for generations. A disembodied hand is not a suitable presence in a child's home. Ms. Oldfellow declared, clutching her clipboard like a shield. On the contrary, Morticia countered. Thing has been instrumental in Harrison's education. His manual dexterity is unparalleled. Harrison's bedroom, despite their preparations, still drew a gasp from the inspector. The four-poster bed with its black canopy and silver skull finials, the walls lined with exotic animal skeletons, all ethically sourced, Harrison assured her, the collection of daggers mounted beside posters of magical creatures, and the elaborate chemistry set bubbling with questionable substances in the corner. This is, Ms. Oldfellow seemed unable to find words. My sanctuary, Harrison finished for her. Where I've always felt safe and nurtured. Young man, she said, visibly trying to compose herself, I need to speak with you privately. Without your adoptive family present. Harrison nodded, and the others reluctantly withdrew, though Thing remained hidden under the bed, a precaution Harrison appreciated. Now, Ms. Oldfellow said once they were alone, her voice shifting to what she clearly thought was a gentle, concerned tone, you can speak freely, Mr. Potter. Are you being coerced or influenced in any way? Perhaps with charms or potions? Harrison's eyes narrowed slightly. No. These people, she continued, undeterred, have exposed you to clearly inappropriate materials and environments. The weapons, the dangerous creatures, the dark artifacts, my family, Harrison interrupted, emphasizing the word, has provided me with knowledge, confidence, and unconditional love. They've never hidden the world's dangers from me, but instead taught me to understand and navigate them. But surely you must see how abnormal this upbringing has been, she pressed. Children should be protected from such morbid influences. Harrison leaned forward slightly, his green eyes suddenly intense. Ms. Oldfellow, with all due respect, I faced Lord Voldemort at the end of last term. I survived because of my upbringing, not despite it. The witch flinched at Voldemort's name. That's precisely my concern. An 11-year-old child should never have been in such a position. Proper guardians would have what? Harrison challenged. Kept me ignorant. Unprepared. The Addamses taught me to face darkness without fear. That's why I'm alive today. Ms. Oldfellow scribbled furiously on her clipboard. I can see you've been thoroughly influenced by their worldview. This is most concerning. What's concerning, Harrison replied coolly, is that the ministry abandoned me as an infant, never checked on my welfare for a decade, and now suddenly wants to dictate what's best for me. The interview continued in this vein, with Ms. Oldfellow growing increasingly frustrated by Harrison's composed, articulate defense of his family. When she finally emerged from his bedroom, her lips were pressed into a thin line reminiscent of Professor McGonagall at her most disapproving. I'll need to speak with each family member individually, she announced. And then conduct a thorough inspection of your domestic practices. The individual interviews proved equally challenging for the inspector. Wednesday's calm description of her educational hobbies, taxidermy is excellent for developing fine motor skills, left Ms. Oldfellow visibly disturbed. Pugsley's enthusiastic demonstration of his chemistry knowledge resulted in a small explosion that singed the inspector's clipboard. Uncle Fester's appearance halfway through the visit, emerging from a secret panel in the wall with his clothes smoking from some electrical experiment, nearly sent her running for the door. By afternoon, Ms. Oldfellow sat stiffly in the parlor, reviewing her notes while the family watched her with varying degrees of concern and amusement. I must be frank, Mr. and Mrs. Addams, she finally said. I have serious reservations about this living arrangement. While Mr. Potter appears physically healthy, the psychological impact of this unusual environment is concerning. Harrison, Morticia corrected gently, though her eyes had darkened dangerously. His name is Harrison. Furthermore, MS. Oldfellow continued as if Morticia hadn't spoken, there are questions about the legality of your custody. The ministry has no record of a formal adoption, magical or otherwise. Perhaps, came a new voice from the doorway, I might offer some clarification on that point. The family turned to see Albus Dumbledore standing in the entrance to the parlor, resplendent in robes of midnight blue spangled with silver stars. Behind him stood a severe-looking witch that Harrison recognized immediately as Professor McGonagall. Albus! Gomez exclaimed, jumping to his feet. What a delightful surprise! Come in, come in. Ms. Oldfellow had gone quite pale. Headmaster Dumbledore. Professor McGonagall. I wasn't aware you were involved in this case. I make it my business to be involved in matters concerning my students' well-being, Dumbledore replied pleasantly, his blue eyes twinkling as he accepted the seat Morticia offered him. Particularly when those students have recently faced Lord Voldemort and emerged victorious. The ministry which flinched again at the name. That incident is precisely why I'm concerned about Mr. Potter's living situation. A child who has been raised in a proper environment would never have been involved in such danger. On the contrary, McGonagall interjected crisply, Mr. Addams demonstrated exceptional judgment and courage during that incident. Qualities that speak well of his upbringing. Indeed, Dumbledore agreed. As for the legal questions regarding his custody, I believe I can address those directly. He withdrew a sealed parchment from his robes. This is the original magical guardianship document for Harry James Potter, dated November 2, 1981. You'll note my signature as Chief Warlock, acknowledging the blood adoption performed by Gomez and Morticia Addams. Ms. Oldfellow took the document with trembling hands. But this contradicts our records. The ministry files clearly state, the ministry, Dumbledore interrupted gently, was in considerable disarray following Voldemort's fall. Many records were misplaced or incorrectly filed. This, however, is the original and binding document. Harrison watched this exchange with growing interest. He strongly suspected Dumbledore was bending, if not outright breaking, the truth. The headmaster had admitted to him in the hospital wing that he had initially placed him with the Dursleys and only later discovered his adoption by the Addamses. Furthermore, Dumbledore continued, I have personally monitored Harrison's upbringing over the years and found it to be most satisfactory. Different from conventional wizarding households, certainly, but eminently suitable for a child of his particular destiny. Ms. Oldfellow looked between Dumbledore and the Addams family, clearly torn between her instinctive horror at the Addams lifestyle and her reluctance to contradict Albus Dumbledore. I will need to consult with my department, she finally managed. Of course, Dumbledore smiled benignly. Though I should mention that, as Supreme Mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards, I have certain discretionary powers regarding magical guardianship in special cases. Should this become a legal matter, I would be obligated to exercise those powers. The threat, for all its gentle delivery, was unmistakable. I see, Ms. Oldfellow said faintly. Well, I think I have sufficient information for my initial report. She rose shakily to her feet. Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. and Mrs. Addams. Headmaster, Professor. After Lurch had shown the rattled inspector out, Gomez turned to Dumbledore with a broad grin. Masterful performance, Albus. That bit about the guardianship document, pure improvisation. The best deceptions contain elements of truth, Dumbledore replied with a small smile. I did indeed monitor Harrison's situation, though perhaps not as officially as I implied. But why help us? Morticia asked, studying the elderly wizard with her penetrating gaze. You initially placed Harrison with his Muggle relatives. A mistake, Dumbledore admitted, surprising Harrison with his candor. Based on incomplete information about blood protections. When I discovered Harrison here, thriving despite, or perhaps because of, your unconventional methods, I realized the blood magic Lily Potter invoked had found its proper home. Blood calls to blood, Harrison murmured. Precisely, Dumbledore nodded. The protection lives in you, Harrison, but it requires a home where love exists. The Addams family, for all its peculiarities, provides that essential ingredient in abundance. We're fond of the boy, Gomez acknowledged, clapping Harrison on the shoulder. Got just the right balance of Potter nobility and Addams madness. A powerful combination, McGonagall remarked, speaking up for the first time since the inspector left. As his performance at Hogwarts demonstrated. After tea, during which Dumbledore delightedly accepted one of Grandmama's suspicious-looking cookies and turned temporarily purple, the headmaster asked to speak with Harrison privately. They walked together in the overgrown gardens behind the mansion, where twisted trees created a canopy of shadows even in daylight. I suspect, Dumbledore began, that you have questions about what happened with Professor Quirrell and Voldemort. Several, Harrison confirmed. Primarily about why Voldemort targeted my parents in the first place. Dumbledore's expression grew serious. A perceptive question. There was a prophecy, Harrison, made shortly before your birth. It suggested that a child would be born with the power to vanquish Lord Voldemort. And he believed this referred to me, Harrison surmised. He did. Only part of the prophecy reached him, however. Enough to identify you as a threat, but not enough to understand the nature of the power you would possess. Harrison absorbed this information thoughtfully. There's another prophecy, he said after a moment. In the Addams family grimoire. About the severed branch returning when darkness rises. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose in surprise. Fascinating. The confluence of two separate prophecies, most unusual. Not separate, Harrison corrected. Connected. The Addams and Potter bloodlines diverged generations ago, but they originated from the same source. My parents showed me the family tree. Ah, Dumbledore's eyes gleamed with sudden understanding. That explains much about your natural affinity for certain types of magic. The Addams family has always had a particular talent for ancient arts that most modern wizards have forgotten. Blood magic, Harrison nodded. Like what my mother, Lily, used to protect me. Indeed. Though I doubt Lily knew she was drawing on ancestral Addams magic when she made her sacrifice. Some knowledge lives in the blood, even when conscious awareness is lost. They walked in silence for a moment, passing a particularly aggressive rosebush that snapped at their ankles. "There's something else you should know," Dumbledore finally said. "Voldemort will return. What you faced was merely a shadow of his former power." "I know," Harrison replied calmly. "His spirit fled when his host died. But he'll find another way back." "Most children would be terrified by that prospect," Dumbledore observed. Harrison shrugged slightly. "Fear is a choice. My family taught me that darkness itself isn't something to fear, only darkness without purpose or principle." "A wise distinction," Dumbledore acknowledged. "Though I suspect our definitions of purpose and principle might differ somewhat." "Perhaps," Harrison agreed. "But the end result is the same. Voldemort must be stopped because he brings not creative destruction, but empty annihilation." Dumbledore studied him with new appreciation. "You continue to surprise me, Harrison Addams. Most grown wizards cannot articulate such a nuanced understanding of dark and light." "The Addamses exist in the shadows between," Harrison explained. "Neither fully dark nor fully light, but loyal to family above all else. Now my family includes both Addams and Potter legacies, and the wider wizarding world." Before they rejoined the others, Dumbledore placed a gentle hand on Harrison's shoulder. "The Ministry will likely continue their inquiries, despite my intervention today. Be prepared." "We will be," Harrison assured him. "The Addams family has centuries of experience evading unwanted official attention." "I have no doubt," Dumbledore chuckled. "Just try not to permanently traumatize any more inspectors." Ms. Oldfellow looked rather shaken. "No promises," Harrison replied with a small smile. "Wednesday hasn't even shown her pet spiders yet." After Dumbledore and McGonagall departed, the family gathered in the library to discuss this new development. "The Ministry won't give up easily," Morticia observed, gently stroking the tendrils of a small potted plant that wrapped affectionately around her fingers. "Bureaucrats are persistent creatures. Let them come," Gomez declared, brandishing his sword cane. "The Addams family has faced down inquisitions, witch hunters, and tax collectors. A few Ministry pencil pushers don't stand a chance. We need a more strategic approach," Harrison suggested. "If they want Harry Potter, perhaps it's time they learned exactly what that entails." "What do you mean, darling?" Morticia asked. Harrison's green eyes gleamed with determination. "I propose we invite some influential Ministry officials to a special gathering. A proper Addams family gathering." Gomez's face lit up with diabolical glee. "A grand soirée. With all the traditional entertainments. The Momstein Waltz," Morticia breathed, a rare excitement coloring her pale features. "The ancestral summoning," Pugsley added eagerly. "And the blood moon ritual," Wednesday finished with the closest thing to enthusiasm her flat voice could manage. "Won't that just confirm their worst fears about us?" Uncle Fester asked, scratching his bald head. "No," Harrison replied confidently. "Because we'll also invite the right people from Hogwarts. People who've seen what I can do because of my upbringing. People who know that Harry Potter needs to be Harrison Addams to fulfill his destiny." "Political maneuvering," Gomez exclaimed delightedly. "Just like Great-Uncle Crucible during the Goblin Rebellions of 1752. "Precisely," Harrison nodded. "We don't hide who we are, we make it our strength." The planning began immediately. Invitations on black parchment sealed with silver wax were dispatched to carefully selected recipients, key Ministry officials including the Minister of Magic himself, Cornelius Fudge, Hogwarts staff including Dumbledore, McGonagall, and even Snape, and influential members of Wizarding Society who might sway public opinion. Harrison also sent personal invitations to Ron and Hermione, along with detailed instructions on what to expect and assurances that most of the dangerous elements will be merely theatrical. The mansion underwent a transformation, not to disguise its true nature, but to showcase it at its most impressively macabre. The Great Hall, rarely used except for major family rituals, was opened and aired. The family ghosts were asked to manifest their most dignified forms. The swamp was temporarily drained to create parking for guests. 2 weeks later, on the night of the summer solstice, carriages and broomsticks began arriving at Cemetery Ridge. The timing was deliberate. The solstice had significance in both traditional wizard culture and Addams family rituals, lending the gathering an air of cultural importance. Harrison stood at the entrance beside his parents, greeting guests as they arrived. He wore formal robes of deep emerald that matched his eyes, custom-made with subtle silver skull motifs at the cuffs and collar, a perfect blend of wizarding tradition and Addams' aesthetic. Minister Fudge arrived looking nervous but determined, flanked by several assistants including a toad-like witch introduced as Dolores Umbridge, who eyed the mansion with undisguised distaste. "Ah, young Mr. Potter." Fudge greeted heartily, though his eyes darted anxiously at the stuffed bear in the foyer that growled as he passed. "Remarkable home you have here." "Harrison Addams," he corrected politely, "though I was born Harry Potter, yes." "Thank you for coming, Minister." "Wouldn't miss it," Fudge replied, though his expression suggested he'd rather be anywhere else. "Quite a distinctive residence." "It's been in the family for generations," Morticia informed him smoothly. "The East Wing dates back to the Inquisition, such inspired architecture from that period." Ms. Umbridge made a small, hem sound. "I understand there are questions about your guardianship of Mr. Potter." "None whatsoever," Gomez replied cheerfully. "Blood adoption is among the most ancient and binding forms of magical guardianship. Predates the ministry itself. But there are regulations," Umbridge began. "Dolores," Fudge cut her off nervously, "perhaps now is not the time for administrative discussions. We're here as guests, after all." Harrison suppressed a smile. The minister clearly wanted to avoid conflict, at least until he assessed the situation. Political self-preservation, predictable and useful. Dumbledore arrived next, resplendent in midnight blue robes embroidered with silver constellations that actually moved across the fabric. He was accompanied by McGonagall, Flitwick, and to Harrison's surprise, Snape, who looked like he was attending his own execution. "Harrison," Dumbledore greeted warmly. "A magnificent evening for a gathering." "The celestial alignments are particularly auspicious," Morticia agreed. "Venus in the 7th house, Mars ascending, perfect for revelations." Ron and Hermione arrived with the Weasley parents, the young wizards looking equal parts terrified and thrilled. Mrs. Weasley appeared ready to snatch her son back at the first sign of danger, while Mr. Weasley seemed fascinated by the eclectic mixture of magical and Muggle antiquities decorating the entrance hall. "Is that an actual electric light bulb?" he asked excitedly, pointing to an ancient Tiffany lamp that emitted an ominous purple glow. "Uncle Fester's snack," Harrison explained. "He absorbs electricity." As more guests arrived, they were ushered into the Great Hall, which had been transformed for the occasion. Candles floated in chandeliers made of animal bones, casting dancing shadows across the stone walls. Long tables draped in black velvet held an assortment of foods both conventional and questionable. A string quartet of skeletons animated by Grandmama's magic played haunting melodies in one corner. "This is mental," Ron whispered to Harrison. "Brilliant, but completely mental." "Wait until the dancing begins," Harrison replied with a small smile. "The Addams family waltz requires protective footwear." The gathering began with casual mingling, carefully orchestrated by Morticia to ensure that ministry officials were paired with Hogwarts staff who could subtly reinforce Harrison's competence and the appropriateness of his upbringing. Hermione found herself deep in conversation with Professor Flitwick and a representative from the Department of Magical Education, enthusiastically describing Harrison's innovative approach to charms. "His understanding of magical theory is remarkable for a first year," Flitwick was saying. "He approaches problems from unique angles that most wizarding-raised children would never consider." Ron, meanwhile, had been cornered by his father and an official from the Department of Magical Games and Sports, recounting Harrison's extraordinary performance as Seeker. "Caught the snitch in his mouth after being knocked off his broom," Ron explained proudly. "Didn't even go to the hospital wing until McGonagall insisted." Harrison moved through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting each guest personally while maintaining a dignified demeanor that clearly surprised those who had expected a feral child raised by Gothic eccentrics. When dinner was served, the guests discovered that alongside the more exotic Addams family specialties, Grandmama's bubbling stew, which occasionally winked at diners, there were perfectly normal options prepared by Hogwarts house elves whom Dumbledore had kindly loaned for the occasion. As the meal progressed, Gomez rose to address the gathering, tapping his glass with a silver dagger. "Distinguished guests," he proclaimed, mustache quivering with excitement. "Welcome to our humble abode. For generations, the Addams family has dwelled on the fringes of wizarding society, preserving ancient traditions that others have forgotten." He paused, his expression growing uncharacteristically serious. "When my wife and I discovered young Harrison, then known as Harry Potter, on that fateful night, we recognized our own blood in him. Not metaphorically, but literally. The Potter and Addams bloodlines have been intertwined for centuries, separated by time but never truly divided." A murmur ran through the crowd. This revelation was news to many present, including several ministry officials who exchanged significant glances. "Tonight," Gomez continued, "we wish to demonstrate why Harrison belongs with us, not just legally or sentimentally, but magically. His destiny requires the unique perspective that only an Addams upbringing could provide." With that dramatic introduction, Gomez nodded to Morticia, who glided forward. The lights dimmed as she raised her pale hands. "We invite our guests to witness a traditional Addams family ritual," she announced. "The communion of ancestors, typically performed only for family, but shared tonight as a gesture of trust and transparency." Harrison moved to the center of the hall, where a circular space had been cleared. Wednesday and Pugsley joined him, forming a triangle around an ornate silver bowl placed on a stone pedestal. "Blood calls to blood," Harrison began, his clear voice carrying to every corner of the silent hall. "Across death and time, we honor those who came before." He drew a small silver dagger and, without hesitation, made a shallow cut across his palm. The blood dripped into the bowl, followed by similar contributions from Wednesday and Pugsley. Many of the guests looked shocked or uncomfortable, but Dumbledore watched with academic interest, while Snape's expression had shifted from disdain to reluctant fascination. As the blood of the three Addams children mingled in the bowl, Morticia began a low, melodious chant in an ancient language that few present recognized. The air in the hall grew heavy with magic, not dark, exactly, but old. Primal. Magic that predated the neat categories of the modern wizarding world. The blood in the bowl began to glow, first red, then silver, rising into the air to form swirling patterns. Within these patterns, faces began to appear, ghostly but distinct. The ancestors of the Addams line, summoned by blood and memory. But what caused gasps among the witnesses were the faces that appeared alongside the obvious Addams forebears, faces that resembled Harrison, with the same untidy dark hair and features that many recognized from old photographs of the Potter family. "James and Lily Potter," McGonagall whispered, her hand at her throat. Indeed, the spectral forms of Harrison's birth parents had materialized within the blood mist, looking not fearful or trapped, but peaceful. "Proud. The blood remembers," Harrison explained to the stunned audience. "Even when families grow distant, even when names change, the magic in our veins remains connected." The ritual concluded with the blood mist dissipating gently, leaving behind a subtle silver glow that lingered around Harrison momentarily before fading. In the silence that followed, Minister Fudge cleared his throat. "Most impressive," he managed. "I had no idea the Potter family had connections to, well, ancient blood magic." Dumbledore supplied helpfully. Indeed, it was common knowledge in certain scholarly circles that the Potters descended from one of the old magical bloodlines, though the specifics were lost to time. "It appears the Addams family has preserved knowledge that the rest of us had forgotten." "But this sort of magic," Umbridge interjected, her voice sickly sweet yet disapproving, "is hardly appropriate for a child of Mr. Potter's importance to the wizarding world." On the contrary, Snape spoke up unexpectedly, causing heads to turn in surprise. Potter's, Addams's, unusual magical background may be precisely what enabled him to survive his encounter with the Dark Lord. Coming from Snape, who had made no secret of his dislike for Harrison during the school year, this statement carried particular weight. "Professor Snape is correct," Harrison said, addressing the room with calm confidence. "When I faced Voldemort in the chamber beneath Hogwarts, my dual heritage protected me. The blood sacrifice of Lily Potter, activated by ancient Addams magic she carried unknowingly in her veins, created a protection that Voldemort could not overcome." Many in the room flinched at Voldemort's name, but Harrison continued undeterred. "The Ministry's concern for my welfare is appreciated but unnecessary. I am exactly where I need to be, with the family that can best prepare me for whatever lies ahead." Even Umbridge seemed momentarily lost for a rebuttal, though her toad-like face remained set in disapproval. The evening continued with more conventional entertainments, music, dancing, including the promised Addams Waltz, which involved elaborate footwork to avoid trapdoors that periodically opened in the floor, and even a fencing demonstration by Gomez that left Minister Fudge cowering behind a suit of armor. As the gathering drew to a close, Harrison found himself approached by a distinguished-looking wizard he recognized as the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. "Mr. Addams," the man addressed him formally, "I must say this evening has been most illuminating. I came with certain preconceptions about your living situation." "And now?" Harrison prompted. "Now I understand that conventional standards may not apply in your case. The magical connection you've demonstrated between the Potter and Addams bloodlines provides legal precedent for your continued guardianship that even the most regulation-obsessed ministry official would struggle to challenge." "I'm pleased to hear it," Harrison replied. "My family may be unconventional, but they've prepared me for my unique path better than any traditional household could have." "Indeed," the wizard agreed. "Though I suspect Madame Umbridge may continue to raise objections. She has rather rigid views on what constitutes proper wizarding behavior. The Addams family has faced more formidable opposition than Madame Umbridge," Harrison said with quiet confidence. "We endure." As the last guests departed, the family gathered in the parlor to assess the evening's success. Even Wednesday looked satisfied, in her own somber way. "A triumph," Gomez declared, puffing on his cigar with vigorous enthusiasm. "Did you see Fudge's face during the ancestral communion? Thought his eyes might pop out." More importantly, Morticia observed, "The right people were impressed. The legal challenges to our guardianship will fade away. Until the next crisis," Harrison noted realistically. "This won't be the end of attempts to control the boy who lived." "Let them try," Wednesday said flatly. "We have oubliettes." "Political solutions before imprisonment, Wednesday dear," Morticia corrected gently. "Though your pragmatism is admirable." The remainder of the summer passed with remarkable tranquility, at least by Addams standards. The ministry investigation quietly disappeared, with Ms. Oldfellow reportedly requesting a transfer to the Department of Magical Transportation, specifically the section dealing with regulation of flying carpets in remote territories. Harrison divided his time between typical Addams summer activities, exploring the family crypt, assisting Grandmama with her more volatile potions, practicing fencing with Gomez, and his Hogwarts homework, which seemed tame by comparison. Ron and Hermione each visited for several days, though Mrs. Weasley insisted on daily flu check-ins during Ron's stay, and Hermione's parents sent her with a comprehensive first aid kit and emergency contact procedures. Both friends gradually acclimated to the Addams lifestyle, with Ron developing a particular appreciation for Pugsley's explosive experiments and Hermione becoming fascinated by the family's ancient grimoires. "These contain magical theory that contradicts everything in our textbooks," she exclaimed while poring over a tome bound in what appeared to be human skin. "Did you know that the standard wand movements we learn are actually simplified versions of much more complex gestures used in ancient blood rituals?" "Mother mentioned something similar," Harrison nodded. "Modern wizardry has streamlined magic for efficiency, but lost some of the deeper connections in the process." In the final week before returning to Hogwarts, Harrison spent considerable time in Gomez's study, examining the Addams family grimoire with his parents' permission. Now that the connections between his Potter heritage and Addams' bloodline had been confirmed, they encouraged him to explore the ancient magic that was his birthright from both sides. "There's a section here about protective enchantments," Harrison noted, carefully turning pages that occasionally shimmered with what appeared to be fresh blood. "Specifically, sacrificial protection. What your birth mother used," Morticia confirmed, looking over his shoulder. Though I doubt she knew the full implications of what she was invoking. "The text mentions that such protection creates a blood ward," Harrison continued reading. "Not just on the person saved, but on any dwelling they call home with those who love them. Precisely why Dumbledore originally placed you with your mother's sister," Gomez explained, uncharacteristically serious. "He believed the blood connection would sustain the ward. But it works with our family too," Harrison realized. "Because of the older blood connection, and because we love you," Morticia finished simply. "Magic recognizes what bureaucracy does not. Love is love, regardless of how conventionally it's expressed." Harrison nodded, oddly touched. The Addams family rarely used such direct emotional language, preferring to express affection through shared macabre experiences or deadly gifts. But the sentiment was always there, underlying everything. "There's more," he said, turning another page. "About how such protection might be extended or amplified." Gomez peered at the text. "Ah, the Blood Sentinel ritual. Haven't seen that performed since Great-Uncle Vlad used it to protect the family during the vampire purge of 1823. It would strengthen the protection my birth mother created," Harrison explained, "by consciously invoking the combined Potter-Addams bloodline." "An excellent precaution," Morticia approved. "Particularly with Voldemort seeking to return. The ritual requires participation from blood relatives," Harrison continued reading. "And it must be performed on the autumn equinox. That's after you return to Hogwarts," Gomez noted with a frown. "But not too far after," Morticia countered thoughtfully. "We could visit for the weekend. Dumbledore would allow it, especially for something this significant." "We'd need a proper ritual space," Harrison said. "Somewhere at Hogwarts where ancient magic can flow freely." "The forest," Gomez suggested immediately. "All those centuries of magical creatures living and dying there, perfect conduit for blood magic." Plans were made, with Harrison agreeing to secure Dumbledore's permission once he returned to school. The ritual would serve multiple purposes, strengthening his protection against Voldemort, formally acknowledging his dual heritage, and creating a magical beacon that would alert the family should he face mortal danger again. On the morning of September 1st, as Harrison packed his trunk for the return to Hogwarts, Wednesday appeared in his doorway, watching him with her usual unblinking stare. "I made you something," she said, holding out a small package wrapped in black paper. Harrison accepted it curiously. Wednesday's gifts were always interesting, occasionally dangerous, and invariably useful in unexpected ways. Inside was a silver locket in the shape of a coffin. When opened, it revealed a compartment containing what appeared to be a tiny preserved spider. "A black widow," Wednesday explained. "Enchanted to reanimate if you're in danger. It will bite your attacker and then return to the locket." "Thank you," Harrison said sincerely, immediately putting the locket around his neck. "It's perfect." Wednesday nodded once. "Mother says you'll face Voldemort again." "Probably," Harrison acknowledged. "Kill him properly next time," she advised flatly. "Decapitation works best for persistent enemies." "I'll keep that in mind," Harrison promised, fighting a smile. The journey to King's Cross was its usual chaotic affair, with Lurch driving the hearse at alarming speeds while Gomez shouted enthusiastic encouragement from the passenger seat. Morticia sat serenely beside Harrison, occasionally offering observations about particularly ominous cloud formations or interesting roadkill they passed. Platform 9 3/4 was crowded with students and parents when they arrived. The Addams family's appearance still drew stares, but notably fewer than the previous year. News of the summer gathering had apparently spread, creating a grudging acceptance of Harrison's unusual family. "Remember the equinox," Morticia reminded him as they prepared to say goodbye. We'll contact Dumbledore to arrange our visit. And if you encounter any more possessed teachers, Gomez added cheerfully, aim for vital organs. Much more efficient. After final embraces, including a surprisingly tight hug from Wednesday, who whispered, "Use the spider wisely," in his ear, Harrison boarded the Hogwarts Express, ready to begin his second year. He found Ron and Hermione already seated in a compartment, engaged in animated conversation about their summer activities. "Harrison!" Hermione exclaimed as he joined them. "I was just telling Ron about that incredible library in your house. Those books on ancient runes were fascinating." "Forget the books," Ron countered. "That exploding chess set your uncle showed me was brilliant. When the knight captured my bishop, it actually caught fire." Harrison settled into his seat, letting their friendly bickering wash over him. Thing emerged from his pocket to wave at his friends before settling on his shoulder like a peculiar epaulette. "Did you see the Daily Prophet this morning?" Hermione asked, pulling out a copy of the Wizarding newspaper. "There's an article about your family." Harrison took the paper, eyebrows raising slightly at the headline, "Potter-Addams Connection Confirmed, Ancient Bloodlines Reunited." The article, written by someone named Rita Skeeter, described the shocking revelation that the boy who lived was the product of two powerful magical lineages, with the clear implication that this explained his survival against Voldemort. While the tone was somewhat sensationalistic, the facts were surprisingly accurate, even respectful of the Addams family's preservation of ancient magical traditions otherwise lost to modern wizardry. "Your party worked," Ron observed. "Dad says everyone at the ministry is talking about it. Even Percy's impressed, and he thinks any magic invented after the 17th century is flashy nonsense." "It's more than that," Hermione added thoughtfully. "This changes how people see blood status. If an old pureblood family like the Addamses is connected to the Potters, who married Muggleborns like your mother, it undermines the whole pureblood supremacy argument." Harrison hadn't considered this political implication, but immediately recognized its significance. "Interesting. That might explain why Dumbledore was so supportive of revealing the connection publicly." Their conversation was interrupted by the compartment door sliding open to reveal Draco Malfoy, flanked as usual by Crabbe and Goyle. Unlike last year, however, his expression wasn't sneering but cautiously curious. "Addams," he greeted with a nod. "Interesting summer, from what I heard." "Quite," Harrison replied calmly. "Yours?" "Ordinary," Draco said with a slight shrug. "Father was rather interested in the Prophet article this morning. Seems your family has a more distinguished lineage than most realized." Harrison recognized the overture for what it was, Malfoy reassessing his position now that the Addams connection had been publicly established. Blood status still mattered to families like the Malfoys, and the revelation that Harrison wasn't merely the half-blood son of a Muggle-born witch, but the descendant of an ancient magical line, changed the calculation. "The Addams family has a long and colorful history," Harrison acknowledged. "Though we've never been particularly concerned with the usual wizarding politics." "Clearly," Draco replied dryly, glancing at Ron and Hermione. "Well, if you ever want to discuss family histories with someone who appreciates the older traditions, you know where to find me." After Malfoy departed, Ron made a disgusted noise. "Typical. The minute he finds out you've got some fancy old bloodline, he's all friendly." "It's not friendship," Harrison corrected. "It's politics. Useful to understand, even if you don't engage with it." "Will you?" Hermione asked curiously. "Engage with it, I mean." Harrison considered the question. The Addams approach has always been to observe political factions without joining them. "We have our own priorities." "Which are?" Ron prompted. "Family. Knowledge." And occasionally, Harrison added with a small smile, recreational explosions. As the train continued its journey to Hogwarts, Harrison felt an unexpected sense of peace. The summer's revelations had integrated his dual identities more completely than he had thought possible. He was Harrison Addams, raised in darkness yet allied with light. He was Harry Potter, marked by death yet vibrantly alive. The contradiction wasn't something to resolve but to embrace. His thoughts turned to the blood sentinel ritual planned for the equinox. It would formalize what he already knew, that blood was more than genetics, family more than names. The Addamses had recognized him as their own from the moment they found him, not because of some distant ancestral connection, but because they saw something kindred in his spirit. Outside the window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, bringing early darkness to the afternoon sky. Harrison smiled slightly at the sight. Some might see it as an omen, but to an Addams, darkness was simply home. Thing patted his cheek in silent understanding, and Harrison settled back to enjoy the journey, ready for whatever adventures his second year at Hogwarts might bring. By the way, he mentioned casually to his friends, my family is coming to perform an ancient blood ritual in the Forbidden Forest during the equinox. Would you like to attend? Ron choked on his chocolate frog while Hermione's eyes widened with equal parts horror and academic interest. Some things, Harrison reflected with satisfaction, never changed. And that was precisely as it should be. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.